Christmas Royale, Love on the Run, Book 4. Written by Jacqueline Hardy. Narrated by Janet Erickson. Chapter 1. Sarah was good and ready for her Christmas break. The plane tickets in her bag were itching to be used, but she still had another hour's worth of papers to go through before she handed them off to Carly. Who knew that being an assistant to a professor would take every waking moment? Of course, most assistants weren't also in charge of making sure their professor's private life as a spy stayed secret. "Hey, Sarah, do you have those papers for me? I'm going to be taking off early today." Carly stood in the doorway holding her baby on her hip. "I'm not done with them, but they're right here." Sarah patted the pile next to her. "Did I forget something?" Carly laughed. "No, Brayden and I just decided to take off to visit his dad for Christmas, and our flight is earlier than I thought." Sarah set the paper she'd been grading on the pile. "Sorry they're not done. I had a final last night. It's okay, don't stress. Go on your vacation, and I'll see you when you get back." Carly picked up the pile. "I can do the rest." "You sure?" Sarah wanted to hug her. If she had to stare at one more paper, her brain was going to explode. "Bye, Sarah. I'd better not find out that you worked instead of enjoying your vacation." She waved and left. Sarah stared at the empty desk in front of her. That was a first. What was she going to do now? Finals were done, and she had no more work to do. She chuckled to herself and stood. It was time to get out of there, and maybe even go shopping before her flight. It was a little cooler this morning than Sarah had expected for Arizona, but that meant a slightly heavier jacket. Soon she'd be bundled up to go skiing, and she couldn't wait. Her car was already packed with her luggage, since she'd planned to leave from the office, so all she had to do was head to the airport. Sarah pulled her keys out of her pocket and opened the car doors to set her bag inside. The lot was almost empty as she pulled out and onto the road. Christmas music played on the radio, and signs along the streets promised great deals for last-minute shopping. Sarah found a spot to park at the mall and followed the throng of people inside. There wasn't much she needed. Something for her parents, and a family gift for her brother and sister. Maybe something for Carly if she could find the right thing. What do you get a boss that goes treasure hunting for a living? A headlamp and extra bullets for their gun? Probably not. The first stop was to a game store to pick out a few games for her nieces and nephews. Hopefully they still liked to play. She grabbed some dice for herself and an RPG game for her brother while she was at it. Maybe they could play over the break. Mom and Dad got slippers and robes, and her sister would get tickets to Wicked. Not bad for a couple of hours in a mall. Sarah readjusted the bags and headed for the food court. One more stop for lunch, and then she really needed to get out of there. Sarah grabbed a sandwich and a soda, then sat at one of the empty tables to eat. She went through her emails like she did every day, half expecting another assignment from Carly. It wasn't that Carly was a slave driver or anything, but living a double life meant that someone else had to take the slack, and being her assistant meant that the pay was better than any of the other campus jobs she could have gotten. If everything went according to plan, Sarah would be able to buy an apartment by the end of the next term. Most of her emails were ads for the holiday season, which she deleted. The email address she screened for Carly was a little more interesting. Students begging to get into one of her classes, others asking for a retake of the final, and the end-of-school reminders from the college department. Sarah replied to the students and sent the reminders on to Carly, even though they'd be deleted before being read. At least she tried, right? Sarah finished the last bite of her sandwich and crumpled up the paper. She gathered up her bags and then her phone and keys, excitement building as she headed for her car. Her phone buzzed with another email, and she stopped in the middle of the crowd of people. She recognized the name, but couldn't remember why. "To whom it may concern, I have some news on a potential crime ring and could use your help. We need to meet as soon as possible, as the robbery will happen soon. Todd Adams." Why did she know that name? She hesitated before sending it on to Carly, and then dialed her phone number. I told you to go on vacation, Carly laughed. What's up? Check the email I just sent you. Something from a Todd Adams. He said there's some crime ring that he could use some help with. Carly grumbled something. I thought we were done with him. Just delete the email. Sarah frowned. It sounds like he actually needs you. Are you sure? Remember the guy who tried to object at Danny's wedding? Yeah. That's Todd. He's bad news. Just delete it and go have fun. We'll figure out what he wants when we get back. Sarah bit her lip. The email was short and impersonal, but she couldn't let it go for some reason. Maybe she should just email him back so Carly wouldn't have to worry about it. Okay, thanks. Have fun. Sarah hung up before Carly could get after her again. She sent a quick reply back to him, letting him know that everyone was out of town for the holidays. Hopefully it wouldn't be too late by the time they all got back. It took some shuffling to get everything she'd just bought into her luggage, but soon Sarah was on her way to the airport. Finally. By the time she got through security and to her gate, it would be about time to board. Just how she liked it. Parking was a pain when she got there, but at least her spot was next to the shuttle that would take her to the right gate. Sarah checked her email again to see if Todd had replied, and there was a new email waiting for her. Is there anyone I can actually meet with? This is urgent. All of my resources were taken, and we need to stop this from happening. I can meet you anywhere if that helps. Just give me a place and a time and I'll be there. Todd. Sarah was thankful the shuttle pulled up to the gate right then. It would give her some time to think. She grabbed her luggage and followed the others out of the shuttle and into the baggage line. Once everything was checked in, she went to stand in the security line. She'd heard enough about him during the search for the crown and scepter to know that he was clingy and obsessed with Danny. That didn't exactly help his case. It was very possible that he just wanted to get closer to Danny by claiming there was something going on. But why now? It had been months and Danny was married. It didn't make sense. Next. The guard's voice made Sarah jump. Sorry. She handed him her ticket and license. Once she was checked in, she set her bag and everything onto the conveyor belt and walked through the metal detector. Christmas music played over the loudspeaker, barely audible over the noise of the crowds. Parents comforting their children, people making phone calls, and arguments over delayed flights. Sarah found her gate and sat next to a power source so she could plug in her phone. The trip to Jackson Hole wasn't too long, but she had a few books she'd been dying to read, and the plane ride was the perfect place to start. The email from Todd sat waiting for a reply in Sarah's inbox. Her finger hovered over the delete button, but she couldn't do it. Since Carly was off on vacation and didn't want to be disturbed, and told her to delete the email, Sarah wasn't about to tell Todd where she was. It wasn't like she would anyway. Now boarding for Jackson Hole. Sarah bit her lip, then quickly typed a response. Everyone else is out of town. I'll be in Jackson Hole, so it may be hard to reach me. You mentioned a crime ring and a robbery. Tell me more. Sarah. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, and then grabbed her bag and went to stand in line. By the time she found her seat on the plane, she was wishing she could take back the email. Why had she told him where she was? That was completely unsafe and against everything Carly had taught her. Oh man, Carly was going to fire her, or strangle her, or something. By the time the plane got to Salt Lake for the connecting flight, Sarah was a nervous mess. As soon as she could turn on her phone, she checked her email. Todd had written back. It's too much to explain in an email, but I have proof that I'm attaching to the email. I'm taking the next flight to Jackson Hole. I completely understand if you don't want to meet me, since this is totally out of the blue, but I'm hoping you'll see the same connections I do. Thanks so much. Todd. A second email came in while she read this one. Hey, I'm just boarding the plane now. Hope you got to see the attachments. I've added 2 more pictures as proof. Sarah had a couple of hours before she would board the next flight, which meant she'd have some time to research. If things seemed fishy, she'd make an excuse to her parents why she couldn't meet up with them and head back home. It was slow getting off the plane as everyone gathered their things and chatted about the snow falling outside. Sarah couldn't help grinning. She'd missed the snow while she was in Arizona. Normally, she would have been heading home to Washington, but now that everyone was out of the house, her parents had decided to do something different and planned Christmas in Jackson Hole that year. Either way, she finally got her snow. 2 weeks of fresh powder and she'd be ready to head back into the school year. The airport was packed with travelers heading to their various destinations. Sarah caught glimpses of the Utah mountains as she set off at a brisk pace to her next gate. She stopped long enough to grab some soup and a couple of snacks, then found a spot in a corner to sit. The chairs were all packed, but she didn't mind. She preferred sitting on the floor where she could have a little privacy. Another lesson she'd learned from listening to Carly and her friends talk about their adventures. Sarah pulled out her laptop and then opened her soup to eat while she waited for her computer to turn on. She knew at the first bite she'd have to order the same thing on the way home. The clam chowder was perfection. When that was finished, she settled back against the wall and opened the email from Todd. At first glance, she saw nothing wrong with the ads he'd sent. They looked like the typical ads for Christmas. A happy family with the woman opening a small box with jewelry inside. But Todd had circled the jewelry and scribbled some notes on the side. Sarah lifted the laptop closer to her face and zoomed in so she could read the writing. Todd's handwriting wasn't the best, but from what she could decipher, the bracelet was one from his grandparents' collection. She frowned. How in the world would he know that? She closed that file and then opened another one. The name of the company was circled with several websites and Google searches cited below it. It was another jewelry ad with a diamond necklace this time instead of the bracelet. The next file on the second email was the same. More websites listed under the ads. It was the last 2 pictures that made Sarah catch her breath, though. She'd seen photos of Todd's grandparents' house after Danny threw the bomb out the window. It had been all over the news for weeks while they tried to figure out what had happened. The photos in the email were from his grandparents' bedroom where they had closets full of clothing, shoes, and jewelry. Todd had circled several bare spots on the walls where there should have been necklaces or bracelets. It could have been a coincidence. Those pieces could have been on his grandma at the time. There was nothing tying the ads and those photos together. Until Sarah looked up the websites that he'd listed. Some were news articles about the explosion, while others specifically mentioned his grandma insisting that she'd been robbed. But then she pulled up the logo from the ad. She did a search to find the company, but the only site she could find was less than impressive. Very few pieces of jewelry, a contact email, and that was about it. She clicked a few more sites to find out more about it. Whoever registered the company's site had done so recently. Odd. How in the world would they have enough money to advertise in national magazines if they were a startup company? While things were a little fishy, there wasn't a lot to go on. It also didn't prove that there was a crime ring or huge robbery planned anytime soon. She forwarded them on to Carly just in case and packed her laptop into her bag. It looked like Christmas vacation was going to be a lot more interesting. Chapter 2. Todd shut the thriller he'd been reading and set it on his lap. Trying to concentrate on anything right now was impossible. The trial for this Mr. Sloan guy had finally ended, and Todd was free of protective custody, only to find out that his grandparents had been framed for kidnapping. Then, when he went to find evidence that they were innocent, he found that several things had been stolen from their house. They weren't the warmest people. His girlfriend Danny had been terrified of them, but they had helped put him through high school and then college while his parents were off doing whatever illegal activities that they felt like doing at the time. And now he was off to Jackson Hole to meet Carly's assistant. He only knew her in passing, but hopefully she'd be willing to listen to him. "Business or pleasure?" The rather plump lady sitting next to him beamed over her glasses. "Excuse me?" She pointed out the window. "Are you going to Jackson Hole for business or pleasure?" "Business." He picked up his book to read and realized she was still staring at him. "You?" "Oh, we come here every year for Christmas. It's no fun celebrating on the beach when I could be skiing, am I right?" She shook as she laughed, then leaned closer. Please tell me you're going to try to at least have a little fun while you're there. Todd shook his head. I'll do my best, but I think meetings are going to last long. I'm hoping to get back to Texas before Christmas, though. Family's down there. Ah, I see. She nodded as if she understood. Well, I do hope you have a lovely time. It's such a beautiful and magical place. That's great. Todd opened his book and pretended to read so that she would go back to the magazine on her lap. His eyes jerked back. Hey, can I see that? She handed him the magazine. You like knitting too? Something like that. Todd flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for. Another ad. This time it was Grandma's pearls. Hey, do you know how to find out who takes the pictures for these magazines? I don't. Why? Todd handed her back the magazine. That's why I'm heading to Jackson Hole this weekend. I have a new business, and I'm looking for a marketing company. I just like the quality of that ad. He had to pat himself on the back for that lie. Having parents like his meant having to come up with stories on the fly. And while it had been a long time since he'd had to do that, he was still pretty good. Oh, that's exciting. What sort of business? Clothing. Todd just hoped she didn't ask him anything about fashion, because he had no clue when it came to material or styles. Oh, and what? Her question was interrupted by the pilot announcing the descent, and Todd could have hugged the pilot. He busied himself putting away the book and making sure he had everything in his bag. Not that there was much in it. He'd grabbed what he could and taken off as soon as he got the email from Sarah. Well, good luck with your conference. I hope you can get back to your family for Christmas. She smiled and set her magazine in her bag. Thank you, and have a Merry Christmas. Todd braced himself for the landing. As soon as he was able to turn his phone back on, he checked for a message from Sarah. She'd agreed to meet with him. He grinned. Now, hopefully, she could help him figure out what had happened. He got a ride to his hotel and took his things up to his room. Sarah had requested meeting somewhere public first, and he couldn't blame her. The last any of them had seen of him was when he tried to object to Danny's wedding. The restaurant she wanted to meet at was just a couple of blocks away. He'd have to buy a coat and gloves before heading out to find her. The jacket he wore from Texas wasn't warm enough for the below-freezing temperatures here. Thankfully, the hotel had a gift shop that carried both, and he was on his way out half an hour later, feeling much warmer than he had since he landed. The restaurant was small with a fireplace to one side. Customers sat at the tables talking quietly while Christmas music played overhead. One girl sat at a table in the corner away from the windows. It had to be Sarah. She was beautiful, a couple of years younger than him, and she fit right into the skiing scene with her hair in braids and her thick coat sitting behind her. Todd weaved through the tables and stood next to her. Sarah? She looked up at him and smiled. Todd? Mind if I sit? Todd gestured to the chair across from her. Go ahead. She closed her laptop and waved a waiter over. I got some hot chocolate, but figured I'd wait until you got here to order food. Thank you, I'm starving. He glanced through the menu. How was your flight? She shrugged. Not bad. Yours? Todd set his menu down. Pretty good. Had a talkative lady next to me, but otherwise it was fine. I was lucky enough to get a row by myself. She handed the menu to the waiter. I'll have the chicken Alfredo and a refill, please. That sounds good. I'll have the Alfredo as well, with a side of breadsticks. Oh, and some soup, please. Once the waiter had left, Todd leaned forward. Did you go through the files I sent you? I did, but I still don't know what you're wanting me to see. Todd folded his hands on the table. I don't know how much you know from Danny, so I'll start from the beginning. My parents were always in trouble, so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. I knew their house inside and out because of how often I played hide and seek with my cousins. Go on. I went to the house after the explosion. I saw the damage that was done, but I also know that nothing else had been touched at that time. Sarah held up a hand. Wait, why were you there? I thought that was a crime scene, and that you were in protective custody. It was, and let's just say I know my way in and out of places. I had to see it for myself. I didn't believe for a second that they were part of it. even though the girl was kept in their house. How is she, by the way? I don't know. She went home after that, and Carly hasn't really talked about her since. Sarah narrowed her eyes. So, were they involved? Todd shook his head. They weren't even in the country at the time. They'd gone on an Alaskan cruise they won. I'm guessing whoever broke into their house used the contest to get them out of there. Do you have any proof? Sarah typed something into her phone. They have pictures from the boat with a timestamp. Todd handed her photos. They'd been gone since long before Anna was taken. It wasn't them. Sarah glanced through the pile and nodded. Any idea who it could have been? My dad, or Mom. Either of them is capable. Todd pointed to the photo Sarah had out. Grandma's jewelry was eccentric. She would pay top dollar for a pair of earrings and not blink an eye. It could have been a random thief, but the pieces that are missing happen to be the most expensive. Sarah frowned. Why would they go after those few things and not grab the rest? I don't know. Fear of getting caught? I just know that we need to stop the sale of those jewels as soon as possible. Can I ask why? I mean, besides the fact that they're your grandma's. Todd sorted through the photos. They have the wedding ring that was passed down through her family, but we also need all of it for evidence. This is like selling items to a pawn shop, but on a global scale. What I don't get is why they would spend so much for advertising when they could have sold them on the black market for so much more. That's a good question. Todd tapped his fingers on the table. Unless they plan to steal and sell jewelry from other people as well. Sarah raised an eyebrow. It's possible. Todd flipped to one of the ads again. I recognize one or two of these items, but not all of them. Most are close enough to what you'd normally see in an ad that no one would ever question them. Except that you did. Todd caught a couple from one of the other tables staring at them and quickly scooped up the pictures to put them in his bag. He should have been paying more attention to his surroundings before taking all of them out. When they were put away, he turned back to Sarah and leaned forward to speak quietly. I did because of who my parents are. I picked up on some of their practices, but never wanted to follow in their footsteps. Apparently, I got enough of a conscience from my grandparents. Todd waited until their food was set on the table and the servers walked away before he continued. So, will you help? Sarah nodded. If you can prove that these are the actual jewels, then we can keep going. And if they're robbing other people as well? She shrugged. That's going to be harder to prove. Harder than tracking down the ad agency who made the ads and then finding the actual company selling them? Sarah laughed. Probably not. Now, no more talk. This food looks absolutely amazing. Agreed. Todd stopped outside of Sarah's hotel and turned to her. Hopefully your parents won't have my head for keeping you out so late. She laughed. Are you kidding? My nieces and nephews are enough to keep them plenty busy. They probably forgot I'm even here. I highly doubt that. Todd handed her a business card. Here's my number. If you find anything, give me a call. She pulled out her phone and typed his number into it. Seconds later, his phone buzzed. She put the card and the phone in her pocket. Now you have my number. Thanks. You'd better get inside before both of us turn into snowmen. See ya, Todd. She turned to leave, and Todd waited until she was inside before walking. The snow seemed to dull all the sounds of the small resort town, except for the crunch of his footsteps. He could have been enjoying the sun in Texas, but he had to admit, this felt a little more like Christmas. Todd paused at the intersection to wait for a car to go past and caught the sound of footsteps behind him. It might have been nothing. It wasn't all that late. But still, he'd learned when to trust his gut, and something was definitely off. He continued past his hotel and went up another street, pausing every so often to glance into store windows. Yes, there was definitely someone there. 2 hotels down, he walked inside and waited around the corner of one of the hallways to make sure no one followed him. A young couple walked inside and glanced around, then walked up to the front desk. He vaguely recognized them from the restaurant and cursed under his breath. So much for being careful. He found one of the other exits out of the hotel and wound around back to his own, taking a back door inside. Once he was up to his room, he made sure all of the locks were bolted and went to the window. It was going to be a long night. Todd yawned as he made a pot of coffee. He had to wait another hour before he could contact Sarah. There had been no sign of the couple, but they'd find him again soon enough. They had to have hacked his email at some point, or they wouldn't have known he was here. Unless Sarah tipped them off. But why would she? His laptop sat open, browsers filled with searches of other stolen property. Nothing came up, including reports for the items at his grandparents' house. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe he was imagining things. But the tears from his grandma were real enough when she told him that her ring was gone. He'd seen that the other pieces were missing himself. Instead of robberies, he decided to search for disappearances. Still nothing. Todd checked the time. It was still too early to call Sarah, but he could call his parents. While he usually avoided them like the plague, they might have intel that he couldn't get anywhere else. He dialed their number before he could change his mind and waited. "Todd, is that you, dear?" "Hey, Mom. How's it going?" There was an audible sigh of relief. "You don't know how worried sick I've been. I've been trying to call you for days, but you haven't answered." Mom burst into sobs that Todd could tell were fake. She hadn't actually cried in years. "I didn't get your calls. Look, there's something going on, and I was hoping you could help me." There was a shuffling on the other end of the line, and then his dad answered. "Are you talking about the disappearances?" Yes? Do Grandma and Grandpa know their jewelry is being—" "They have nothing to do with this. Please tell me you haven't left protective custody." Todd hesitated. "No, I haven't. Why?" "Oh, good. Listen, someone is out there taking out our crime ring one at a time, robbing them, then taking them or their family hostage." Dad cleared his throat. "When you didn't answer, we were sure they had you too." "No, I'm safe. For now." But he wouldn't be using his email account anymore, and he'd have to get a new phone after this. "What about you? Where are you?" More shuffling. "We're safe, sweetie. Just tell us where you are and we'll come get you. I want to make sure they don't get you too." Dad just said to stay here." Todd rubbed his forehead. "He doesn't know what he's talking about. I think it's better if we stay away from each other for now. It'll make it harder for them to get to us." And there was no way he wanted them to know where he was anyway. "Listen, you mentioned they were robbing people. Do you know what they've been taking?" "Does it matter? Look, I'd feel better knowing where you are. And it's Christmas. We've always loved Christmas together, right?" "Yeah, when they were off robbing houses while families were out of town." Todd pushed that thought away. "It's better this way. You two stay safe." He hung up before they could say anything else. He made sure to grab Sarah's number from his contacts and then destroyed the phone. If they were going to do any research, they'd have to use Sarah's instead because of the possible spyware on his. The city was just beginning to wake up, so it was time to get going. He used the hotel phone to call the number, hoping it wasn't too early. "Hello? Hey, Sarah. I had to use a different number. I didn't wake you, did I?" Todd gathered up his warm clothes. Sarah laughed. "Obviously, you've never traveled with kids. I've been awake since 6 this morning. What's up?" "I have a lead, but I can't use my computer. Any chance you can meet somewhere?" There was a pause while she talked to someone in the background. "Mom said we're making cookies, so I can't leave quite yet. She told me you can come over here if you'd like." Okay." Being with her family wasn't something that he had in mind, but if it meant getting to talk to her afterward. "I'll have to grab a phone first, and then I'll be there. What's your room number?" "We have the suite. Just go up to the top floor." Sarah laughed at something someone said. "Sorry, I better go before I'm covered in frosting." Todd hung up and put on his coat and boots. Cookies? Frosting? People actually did that stuff? He made sure he had his key and left the room with his backpack. He needed to get rid of the laptop, but not here. He could dump it on the way to Sarah's hotel. The electronics store wouldn't open for another half hour, so Todd went to get some coffee and breakfast at a nearby cafe. He followed Sarah's example from the night before and sat in the corner facing the window so he would see everyone who went in or out of the cafe. While he ate, he formatted the computer, then poured the last of his coffee onto the keyboard to fry everything inside. They'd most likely still be able to get to the information, but this would slow them down. Instead of going out the front door, Todd went toward the restroom, then slipped out the back and dumped his laptop into the trash. Thankfully, they hadn't dumped it yet, so whoever wanted it would have to go through all kinds of old food and grease. He walked through the back alley for a couple of blocks, then turned down another to get to the main road. The store was just opening, which normally would have meant that the store was empty, but Christmas had the crowds lining up early. That wasn't going to work for him. A cheap prepaid phone would have to do. He grabbed one at a gas station and then crossed the street to Sarah's hotel. Todd pushed the button to the elevator, keeping watch on the area around to make sure the couple from last night wasn't around. It seemed that everyone was either shopping or sleeping in because the lobby was pretty much empty. The elevator opened up to one single door on the top floor. He knocked, his stomach tied in knots. He hadn't had much family bonding time, unless crime sprees counted, so meeting Sarah's family was something he wasn't really ready for. Maybe he should have asked to meet somewhere else instead. Sarah opened the door. "You made it. I was beginning to worry." "Sorry, some things came up and I had to make sure I wasn't being followed." That probably wasn't the best thing to say considering he just showed up on her doorstep. "There are people following you?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" Todd held up the cell phone still in its package. "I had to drop the last one. Somehow they knew all my plans. Knew where to find me. I'm pretty sure my phone or email was tapped. Maybe both." "But how did they find you?" Sarah winced when her name was called. "Come in. There are 2 police officers in my family, so you should be safe in here." Todd grew lightheaded. "Maybe I should go. We can chat." "Were you guilty of everything that you were accused of?" She raised her eyebrows. "No, I was cleared of all the charges. Well, except for a few things I did for my parents when I was younger." Todd didn't exactly want to admit that, but since she was the one trying to help him, he figured he'd give her full disclosure. "I'm just not comfortable around them. Old habits and all that." Sarah laughed. "Come in. I promise to make sure they don't bite." He still hesitated. "You sure you want me in there? I mean, family gatherings aren't exactly my thing." "It's time to change that. Come in." She grabbed his hand and pulled him inside the room. Todd stared down at their hands, feeling the spark of electricity from her touch. He hadn't felt that before, and it was something he hoped he could experience again. Sarah stopped in the kitchen and moved her hand from his up to his shoulder. Another spark. "Mom, this is my friend Todd, and that's my sister Anne. Haley and Amber are around here somewhere." "Ah, so this is who took my daughter away last night." Sarah's mom beamed and held out a flour-covered hand. "Oh, sorry. 1 sec." She wiped her hands and tried again. "My kids are always getting after me for having flour fly everywhere when I bake." Sarah rolled her eyes. It's so true. "So, Todd, where are you from again? How did you 2 meet?" I'm from Texas, but went to school at the same college as Sarah. We just met a few days ago, though." Sarah nodded. "He's a friend of Carly's, Professor Wyatt's. We met while talking about one of her lectures." Todd held in a smirk. Lectures was right. She wasn't too fond of him because of Danny, not that he blamed either of them. Trying to interrupt Danny's wedding hadn't been one of his finest moments. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Todd. If you want to help out, there are more cookie cutters on the counter behind me." She picked up her rolling pin. Todd glanced over at Sarah before doing what her mom said. He found a Christmas tree cookie cutter and took the dough he was handed. "You just need to make sure they're thin enough." Sarah rolled out her ball of dough. "See? This is about what you want." "Got it." He rolled out his dough like Sarah showed him and cut out the small shapes. The first one broke, and then the second one. Sarah laughed. "Look, try it this way first. Shake it back and forth like this, and then it will come out of the cookie cutter. See?" Todd raised an eyebrow and tried it the same way. The Christmas tree was a little warped, but it still made it onto the pan. He gave a mini cheer and went back to what he was doing. It took a moment to realize that Sarah and her mom had both stopped to watch him. Did I do something wrong? He added another tree to the pan. I just haven't seen anyone cheer for themselves like that before. Sarah made the same cheering motions with her hands. Todd shrugged. That's because you've never seen anyone make Christmas trees quite as awesome as mine. Sarah laughed. I suppose I haven't. They finished 2 more pans and put them in the oven. Todd walked over to the sink to wash the flour off his hands. A memory flashed through his mind and he froze. He had to have been around 10 when his mom had pulled out the cookie dough from the fridge. It was the kind where he was supposed to slice the log of dough and set them on the sheet. But he'd done it too thick. His mom had screamed at him about wasting money and time and moved him out of the way so she could do it herself. Todd shook his head. Where had that come from? He didn't even remember doing that with his mom. Maybe he'd blocked it from his memories. He'd certainly done that often enough over the years. Memories of the crimes committed in front of him, of stealing lunch money at school so he could eat because his parents forgot. Todd, are you okay? Sarah's soft voice broke its way into Todd's thoughts. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block those memories again. Yeah, I'm fine. Sorry. Headache. Sarah snatched 2 bottles off the counter. I have children's or adults ibuprofen. Or I have acetaminophen if you prefer. Or there's... Adult ibuprofen is fine. Todd laughed. Why do you have so many bottles here? Lots of people in one spot. You need to make sure that everyone has something they can use, right? She tossed him the bottle and set the others down. Need something to eat with that? Todd pulled a tablet out of the bottle. I'm fine. Just a glass of water would be good. Sarah handed him a glass of water and a large ornament sugar cookie. Nothing cures an ailment like one of Mom's cookies. It's Okay, I'll try it. He laughed at the expression on her face and took it from her. The ornament had been decorated with delicate designs. Todd took a bite, and the soft, smooth texture mixed with the sugary, lemony flavor made him pause. So this was what sugar cookies were supposed to taste like. Wow. Right? Sarah poured 2 mugs of hot chocolate and gestured toward the kitchen table. It'll be a bit before we need to make the second batch. He sat across from her and swallowed the medicine in his hand before taking another bite of cookie. So, do you do this every year? Make cookies as a family? Yep. I figured that with us going to a cabin, it wouldn't happen this year, but Mom insisted. It's not Christmas without it, her mom called from the other room. Sarah leaned forward. Mom hears everything if you hadn't noticed. Todd nodded and ate quietly. The view from the large window by the table was breathtaking. The snow-covered mountains, shops lining the streets, and Christmas decorations below was like a scene on a Christmas card. This was already much better than what he'd had planned for Christmas that year. Except that right now he was on the run from someone while he tried to figure out what was going on with the stolen jewelry. And just like that, the few moments of peace he'd had were gone. He was here to clear his name and help his grandparents. You said you had some information. What was it? Sarah whispered. Todd glanced toward the kitchen where her mom laughed at something one of the grandkids had said. It can wait. Sarah popped the last bite of her cookie in her mouth and stood. I've made my cookies. I'll grab my stuff and then we can go on a walk or something. Thanks. Todd finished the last of his and drank his hot chocolate while he waited for her. He stood and took his mug to the sink, then put on his own coat. Ready? Sarah was dressed in full ski attire, from the hat and goggles down to her gloves and snow pants. What? It's cold out there. Todd chuckled and zipped up his coat. You're right. It is. You two stay warm out there. Dinner is at 6 tonight if you'd like to eat with us. Sarah's mom held out a hand for Todd to shake. It was a pleasure to meet you, Todd. It was nice to meet you, too. Todd opened the door and left the suite, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. He pushed the button to go to the lobby. Your family is nice. Sarah smiled. Thank you. They can be a bit overwhelming, but we also have a lot of fun. Todd didn't know what to say to that, so he just stayed silent. When they got to the bottom floor, Todd held up a finger to tell Sarah to wait. He poked his head out of the elevator doors to look for the couple from the night before, then waved for her to come out behind him. The coast was clear, at least from those two. There could have been more people for all he knew. They took the back door and weaved their way through alleys again before finally going out onto the main street. Sarah pointed to a small diner across the street. They crossed the road, walked inside, and straight to the back, then down 2 more stores to a bakery. Once inside, Todd watched for anyone who might be following them. "Sorry to take you away from your family. I should have just waited until after Christmas to contact you." "It's fine. From everything you showed me last night, something needs to be done immediately." Sarah walked along the counter looking at the breads, muffins, and donuts before ordering a pretzel for both of them. They found a table in the back corner where they could still see the window. Todd positioned himself so he could see, but not be seen, by whoever came inside. "I did some more research on those magazine ads you found." Sarah pulled out her phone and typed in her PIN. Trying to find the agency through the magazine itself was impossible, so I had to dig deeper online to find out who this company used for advertising. Todd frowned. "I did the same thing and couldn't find any more information." "That's because you don't have the same access I have. Let's just say Ed has a slightly different way to search things than most people do." She slid the phone over to him. "Every agency does their advertising in their own way. Their signature, if you will. This one matches a few different agencies, but it was easier to find them once I added the search for this company." Todd scrolled down the notes that she'd made and stopped. "I've heard of these guys. They're one of the top agencies in the country." "Exactly." Sarah pulled a folded-up paper out of her coat and smoothed it out. "That's why this ad looks so professional. Silverscript uses the best photographers and agents. I wouldn't have thought they'd get themselves entangled in fraud. They advertise for some pretty big names." Todd handed the phone back. Sarah nodded. "I agree. But they had the money and the merchandise. A few logos, the right words, and you can go anywhere with it. That said, I'm thinking someone at Silverscript is going to be fired as soon as this gets out." Todd pulled out his new phone and went to the browser to pull up the company. "They've really fixed the site up since I saw it last." "I noticed that this morning. It's strange, though, since it's just a front for whatever it is that they're doing." "I agree." Todd pulled up Silverscript ad agency. "So, do we contact them to let them know what's going on?" Sarah sighed. "I already have, but we don't have a lot of proof to go on yet. I'm torn between heading to New York to talk to them and just waiting to see what they say. Either way, they need to know so they can cut ties." "I wouldn't go there. That'll raise flags that we don't want to have raised." Todd caught a man near the front staring at them and leaned forward. "Speaking of flags, I think it's time to go because we have a few listeners." She nodded. "I've noticed that too." They stood and Todd helped her with her coat. She threw the napkins away, then slid her arm through his as they walked outside, laughing. Sarah tugged on Todd's jacket to have him follow her. They walked quickly up the street and caught a bus. Neither spoke as the bus moved through the streets. It was clear that they had no idea who they could trust and who was there for him, and Todd didn't want to give anything away. The bus stopped and everyone stood to leave. Todd followed Sarah out of the bus and stared up at the lift in front of them. "You want to go skiing?" "Just bear with me. Come on." Sarah pulled out her wallet, but Todd put a hand on her arm. "Let me get this one." He paid for a lift and threw in lunch at the top of the hill, since they didn't have skis and he had no idea what else there was to do up there. It was a good thing he'd bought the warmer clothes the night before. Even so, he stopped at the gift shop and bought a thick blanket to put over the top of them on the way up. Sarah bought 2 scarves before they left and stopped at the door. "Wait, you're going to want one of these." She pulled the packaging off and threw it away, then wrapped it around his neck and face. "Too tight?" "No, but I still feel claustrophobic in it." His voice was muffled from the cotton, but he had to admit his face was already warmer after walking from the bus. "I get that feeling too, but at least our faces won't freeze off." She put her scarf on and gave him a thumbs up before opening the door. They were hit with an icy blast of wind as they fought their way to the line. Maybe this wasn't the best idea in the world. A nice warm hotel room or office sounded much better. Todd wrapped the blanket around the two of them, figuring it would be easier to do that now than when they were in the air. When it was finally their turn, Sarah showed him where to stand, and the chair came around to sweep them up. Heights were definitely not his favorite thing, but with the snowy ground below them, he had to admit it was beautiful up here. Sorry for the freezing temps, but I figured this was the best place to get a little privacy. Sarah scooted a little closer, and Todd resisted the urge to wrap an arm around her. Instead, he pulled the blanket tighter to try to block more of the wind. We could have just gone back to my room where there were no people, and warmth. Sarah laughed. As much as I love the warmth, I don't trust your place. Too many people walking around here that seem to know where you are. This way we can talk without anyone else hearing. You don't think our words will carry? Usually, yes, but the wind is hitting us from the side. If anyone gets anything, it'll be the people going down, and they won't get enough to make any difference. She had a point. Wind made the snow swirl up around them as storm clouds moved toward them. He could no longer see the top of the hill in the distance. Okay, so getting back to what we were talking about, how do we let Silverscript know without going to New York to tell them? Todd shifted in his seat and immediately regretted it because the seat was cold, and the movement made their whole chair rock more than it already was. I'm not sure what else we can do with them. We have to wait for someone to contact us, which is hard over Christmas. So, I guess for now, we let that part drop and then figure out the next step. You said you had intel you found this morning. What is it? Todd went over everything that his parents had told him that morning, including the fact that they wanted him to come and be with them. The problem is, I don't know who else has been targeted, just that they have been. Sarah's eyebrows lowered. Do your parents always insist on doing Christmas with you? No, that's another thing that's weird. Normally I would understand them wanting to know where I am, so they know I'm safe, but that is completely out of character for them. As soon as I told them I wanted nothing to do with their line of work, they basically cut me off. You don't think they're already in trouble, do you? Todd frowned. She could have a point, but they had keywords they used for cases like that, and they hadn't used any of them. Maybe, but I think it's more than that. They know I have money. Not tons, but enough that they want it. Can I ask what you do for a living? I work for a consulting firm. I fix computers and help set up networks. I figured I could do something with the skills my parents taught me. She glanced up at him. If you can do that, why didn't you find out all this information on your own? I can fix them, but I can't hack them. I don't have the back-end stuff that you and your group have. If I did, I could have figured it out on my own. Except, I don't want to. I need someone to actually believe that I'm not the same person my parents are. Todd looked away from Sarah. Vulnerability was something he didn't like, and admitting what he just had was tough. Sarah found his hand under the blankets and squeezed it. Hey, I get it. We'll figure this out. And if there's nothing to prove? If everything points to me? There was a pause, and Todd turned to see what she was thinking. Well, no one is immune to my mom's cookies. If you were a bad guy before that, those cookies will cure it. Todd laughed. I guess so. Chapter 3. Sarah stood at the top of the mountain with Todd and wondered what in the world she was doing. Both of them knew that this whole investigation could be nothing, or they could break up a major crime ring, or Carly could be right and he could be bad news. The lunch they were supposed to go to was just up ahead. It had sounded a lot more fun before the wind picked up. Todd held tightly to her hand as they trudged forward to meet up with everyone else. The lights from the cabin were just ahead, and that's all Sarah could focus on until they made it through the door. It was a good thing Mom had decided to wait until the next day to take the grandkids skiing. They'd blow away in this. The warmth from the fireplace was welcoming as she and Todd walked inside. She pulled off her scarf, laid it next to her, and Todd did the same. Well, that was adventurous. Todd rubbed his face. My cheeks are still numb. Aren't you glad I insisted on the scarves? She pulled her gloves off and blew on her fingers. Todd draped their wet blanket over the chairs that faced the fireplace. Yes, and I'm glad I got this as well. Me too. Sarah glanced at the other guests, wondering if any of them were after Todd. Most were younger couples and a few families with older kids. They seemed innocent enough. Of course, most people probably wouldn't be walking around with the word villain written across their foreheads. Todd was busy with his phone, so Sarah pulled up her email as well. Most of it was junk, but she found one there from Carly. "I can't believe you ignored me and talked to him anyway. We're going to have a talk when I'm back in town. That said, I think you're both right and that there's something up. I talked to Dee and Ben, and they're going to see if Ben's dad can figure out anything at Silverscript. It's the best option we have since he's the only one in New York right now. Be smart. Don't get attached. Watch your back. And Sarah, be careful. Carly." Sarah grimaced. If Carly knew that Sarah had let him bake cookies with her family, she'd just leave that part out until later. Or never. That worked too. She set her phone down and smiled when she realized Todd was staring at her. "What?" "You had some pretty hilarious expressions just now. Everything okay?" Sarah cleared her throat. Mostly. I just got an email from Carly." Todd's face fell. "Oh, bad news?" "Not really. More that she's still worried that you're bad news." Sarah smiled up at the waiter who brought them soup. "Thank you. I wish I could say I didn't deserve that. She saw me at my worst. Well, not my worst, but it was pretty bad." Todd took a sip of his soup. "Oh man, I worried I wouldn't like this soup, but it is fantastic." Sarah picked up her spoon. "I've always liked butternut squash, but it has to be cooked right." "I don't know if it's right or not, but it's amazing." Todd dipped his bread into it. "So, did she have anything else to say?" "She has someone looking into Silverscript, which is a relief. That's one thing off our plate. Now we just have to figure out who's doing it, where the money is, and who is after you. No biggie." She took a bite and sighed. Definitely cooked right. Todd slid his phone across to her. "I have an inkling of who could be coming after us, actually. I just got this email from an old friend, and it's rather suspicious." Sarah scanned the email and frowned. "He's just wanting to get together for drinks. Is that bad?" "It is when he says he's in town. And when we haven't spoken to each other in a good 2 years. Todd leaned forward. "This isn't a friend from college. This is back when I was helping my parents. His family is tied in with the same group." Sarah's eyes widened. "Do you think it was really him who sent the email?" "The writing style is the same, but that's easy enough to copy. Problem is, when he says he's in town, I don't know if that means here, which could be really bad, or in Texas. There's not enough there." "I wouldn't reply." Sarah shifted uneasily. Something seemed off, and she hoped it was just because of the email. Todd put the phone back in his pocket. "I don't plan to, but Sarah, if he's here..." Sarah's stomach tied in knots at his words. The uneasiness became more pronounced, and the little hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Todd?" "I know." He glanced around the room. "Everything seems safe enough up here. There aren't many people here, so they can't really hide." "You're sure?" Sarah took another bite, then pushed away the soup. Worry made her lose her appetite. Todd put a hand on hers. "Hey, I'm not going to let anything bad happen." "You can't guarantee that. We're up here in what could basically be called a blizzard with a bunch of people we don't know. We have no skis, no snowboard, no way to get down if we have to hurry." Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm down. It wouldn't do anyone any good if she had an anxiety attack right now. "You're right, but that also means that they're in the same boat as we are. They won't make their move if they have no way of getting me off the mountain, right?" Sarah wanted to believe he was right, but Carly was supposed to be safe in an empty pyramid, and she'd had not one but 2 guys show up to try to steal the necklace she'd gone to retrieve. And that was just one of Carly's adventures. "I guess so." Sarah picked her spoon back up. "For now, I just want to enjoy my food." Todd grinned. "Sounds good to me." The soup was followed by chicken and rice, and then cheesecake. By the time they were finished, Sarah was glad they'd made the trip. It was heading down that she wasn't too excited about. The snow had begun to fall, which meant the lift was going to be miserable, even if it meant sitting close to Todd. She was doing exactly what Carly had warned her not to and growing closer to him. After they figured things out, she could walk away, and he could do his own thing. After all, they'd only known each other for 2 days. "I think we need to head back." Sarah nodded toward the window. "Oh man, hopefully the blanket has dried out." Todd stood and pulled on his coat. Sarah slipped hers on as well and put on her gloves. The blanket was still a little damp, but it would have to do. They stepped out in the cold and Sarah shivered. "Ready? We'll take off at a run." Todd pulled his scarf up farther over his nose. "Going somewhere?" a man asked from behind them. Todd stiffened and swore under his breath. "Keep walking." Sarah tried to look back, but Todd yanked her arm to keep going. As soon as they were clear of the building, Todd dove for the nearest grove of trees. "Looks like I was wrong," he breathed heavily. "Is there any other way down from the mountain?" "I told you, we don't have skis or snowboards, so we can't go down that way." Sarah bit her lip and poked her head out. "They're coming." They ran through the trees, keeping each other up. Any thought of being cold was gone as adrenaline rushed through her, keeping her legs moving. Shots rang out behind them, making Todd run even faster. "Where are the other lifts? There's got to be more than one, right?" Todd paused behind a tree to catch his breath. "I don't know. This is the first time I've been here." Sarah gasped for air. Another shot rang out, spurring them forward again. They broke out into a clearing, and Todd suddenly stopped. "What is that?" Todd pointed to 2 rails heading down the mountain. Sarah's gaze followed the rails farther up the mountain. "Our way back to town. Come on, stay low." They ran up the hill the best they could, slipping on the ice. Shots sounded behind them, coming closer all the time. Sarah made it to the top of the alpine slide before Todd and went straight for the shed. The sleds were most likely stored inside for the winter. No luck. There was a rather large padlock on the door. "Move." Todd pulled his wallet out of his pocket and took 2 pins out. Old habits die hard. Within moments, he had the door unlocked. He grabbed one of the sleds and handed it to Sarah, then grabbed a snow shovel. Sarah left the shed and peeked around the corner, barely jerking back in time to avoid getting hit by a bullet. "They're here." "I know." He put the lock back on the door and put the pins in his coat pocket. "You're going to steer while I shovel the snow off. Most of it looks clear, but I want something just in case. Keep your head down." "Got it." Sarah held tightly to the sled. "Ready?" He nodded once and took off around the corner, Sarah darting after him. She set the sled down and climbed on. Another shot rang out, followed by a grunt from Todd. "No." He fell to his knees next to the slide. Sarah climbed back off and grabbed Todd around the chest and fell onto the sled. She rotated him so he was on top of her legs, then pushed off. Shots continued, but with the extra weight on the sled began to move faster. Her mind went to the events she'd watched at the Winter Olympics, and she did her best to lie flat. It was hard to do while also trying to keep Todd from falling off, but they needed to get out of there. "Todd? Hey, are you awake?" The words were more to comfort herself, to hear something else other than the screams from behind. He groaned. "Barely." "Where were you shot?" There were too many layers between them for her to tell. "I'm getting us down there as fast as I can, but I need to know that you're okay." She grimaced as they came to a corner and leaned into it so they wouldn't tip. "I was shot in the back, but I think it was more of a graze. I should be okay." He gasped out a laugh. "I say, as we barrel down a mountain, do we even know where this goes?" Sarah glanced behind her to see if anyone was following before she answered. Not a good idea. Motion sickness hit as they whipped around another corner. "No, but I'm really hoping it ends up in the city somewhere. Was that your friend?" "No, it was his dad, but I'm guessing he's around here somewhere as well, and they're probably not going to be too far behind." He tried to sit up, but Sarah kept him down. "Where's the shovel?" "I couldn't get it and you at the same time. Watch out." She leaned the other direction as they went around another bend. "You need to stay down." He shook his head and sat up. "We're going too fast. It won't do any good to get away if we go flying off the sled." Sarah wanted to fight him, but he was right. Her adrenaline was screaming at them to go faster, but they were gaining momentum too quickly. She let him take over and leaned into the turns to help that way. She wanted to cry when the town came into view. A few hundred more feet and they'd be there. As they went around the last turn, though, Todd fell back on her, knocking them off balance. The sled tipped and they went flying. Sarah landed hard and saw spots in front of her eyes as she tried to catch her breath. When she was able to move without the world spinning, she flipped over and crawled to Todd's side. He didn't respond, and the snow was red from his blood. "Todd, hey, wake up." She pulled off her glove and checked his pulse. It was there, but weak. She fumbled for her phone in her coat pocket and dialed. "Hey, Dad?" "Oh, hey, sweetie. We were just wondering when you'd be back. Dinner is about to start." Sarah closed her eyes to fight back tears. "Daddy, I need your help." Sarah checked her trunk one more time to make sure she had everything, then slammed it shut. Mom and Dad stood at the entrance to the rental place, Dad's arm around Mom. "I'm sorry." Mom wrapped her arms around Sarah. "You take good care of him. Call me when you get to wherever you're going." "I will." She hugged her dad next. "Make sure Mom sends me some of her cookies." "I will if I don't eat them first." He kissed her cheek. "I packed my gun in the back seat. You remember how to use it?" She nodded and wiped her eyes. "Don't tell anyone else what's going on, okay? Just tell them I had to leave for work and I'll see them at Easter." They nodded and Sarah climbed into the car. Todd slept in the passenger seat, his light snores making Sarah smile. It had been scary when they first got off the mountain, but Dad had known exactly what to do to help sew up the wound. Hopefully Todd wouldn't wake up for a while. The trip would be long, but they needed to get out of Jackson Hole as soon as possible. They would trade the car 3 more times on the way, which meant they needed to get on the road before the snow got any worse. The phone rang and Sarah glanced at it. Carly. "Hey." "You're out of town?" Carly's anger burned through the phone. "Yes, we're on our way to the lodge now." There was an audible sigh of relief. "And you're sure that Todd is who he says he is?" Sarah glanced over at him. "As far as I know, he's given no reason for me to think otherwise." "I can think of a few." Carly shushed someone on the other end of the line. "I've sent people to the first rental place with your info. Follow it exactly. And I know you love your blonde hair, but it's going to have to go for now. Todd's as well." "I have to dye my hair?" Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror, but the road was empty. "Yes, I'm sorry." Sarah nodded, even though she knew Carly couldn't see it. "Thank you." "You're welcome. You let us take care of everything, got it? Right now, your job is to keep him safe. If either of you find anything out, go straight to the contacts on the list. We don't want them connecting us. And make sure to call me when you get to Idaho Falls. It's killing me that we don't have someone there to go with you." "We'll be fine. I'll call when I get to our first stop." "Talk to you then." The line went dead. Sarah set the phone down and sped up. The sooner they could get away from Jackson Hole, the better. Protective custody. It was the last thing she'd ever planned on doing with her life. She thought they'd just be sending Todd there since he was the one in trouble, but if he showed up injured with no one to help, people would get suspicious. Not to mention the fact that the people after him on the mountain had seen them together. So instead, here she was driving away from her family a week before Christmas to some tiny town in Idaho. Not exactly her idea of a perfect holiday. Maybe the next time Carly told her not to email someone, she should listen. Sarah watched for the icy spots on the road as she drove through the mountains of Idaho. The roads had been clear for the most part, but the sun had gone down already, making the ice harder to see. She turned on the radio to listen to Christmas music, keeping it low enough not to wake Todd. By the time she finally reached Idaho Falls, she was ready for a nap. The adrenaline from the mountain had worn off, and she wanted to sleep for a few months. She dialed Carly's number. "You're there?" "Yep." "All right, take Broadway and then follow the directions I've sent to your phone. And make sure you discard that phone as soon as you get there." "Okay." Sarah set her phone where she could see the directions and followed them into the middle of town. After going down the same roads several times, Sarah was sure that the phone navigation system must be broken. She was about to call Carly back when the signs for the airport came into view. She'd be picking up a rental there, apparently. Todd stirred as they pulled into the airport. He groaned and sat up. "Where are we?" "Idaho Falls. Come on." Sarah climbed out and met two guys leaning against a clunker car. "Hey, Ed." Ben grinned. Ed was his code name, and that's all Todd needed to know for now. "Hey, Sarah. Didn't have enough Christmas excitement, huh?" "Nope. Have my papers?" She was always nervous around him. Something about his perfect smile and eyes. She was surprised to see Hunter here as well. It was his wedding that Todd had interrupted, and by the looks they were shooting at each other, neither had forgotten. Ben held the folders out and stood up. "Leave the car here with all of your stuff and follow us. You'll get new things on the plane." "Wait, plane? We were supposed to drive." Sarah grabbed her wallet, then dropped it immediately at the look on Ben's face. "I can't just leave this here." "Plans changed, and yes, you can. They'll be taken care of, I promise." He took the keys from her and tossed them to Hunter. "As soon as we get you on that plane, the rest is up to you. We have to get back before our wives have our heads." The plane was small and barely had room for Todd and Sarah. The pilot saluted them and started the engine. Sarah turned to wave at Hunter and Ben before sitting in her seat. If it hadn't been for the fact that those two were there waiting for her, she would have worried about the sudden change in plans. And if they were here, where were Dee and Danny vacationing? Sarah had figured it would be out of the country or something. Sarah handed Todd's file to him and went over hers. She stopped at one of the words and gasped. Married? They expected her to pretend she was married to Todd? She barely knew the guy. "What's wrong?" Todd's voice was still a little slurred from sleep, but otherwise he seemed fairly alert. Just read your papers. You'll see soon enough." Sarah continued through her papers, memorizing as she went. Carly had hired her immediately for her photographic memory. Knowing what the plans were was one thing. Sarah just wasn't sure that she could actually act the part. Drama wasn't exactly one of her strengths. Todd laughed. "Are they serious?" Sarah nodded. "They joke about a lot of things, but not when it comes to the safety of their people. We'll just have to get into character, and then it will be fine." "Okay." Todd flipped through his pages. "I think I have all this. Make sure you don't get mixed up with the details from last time." Sarah shuffled her papers even though she already knew all of the details. She was London Matthews, married to Weston Matthews for the last 2 years. They wanted to settle down in a small town with a white picket fence. "It's a totally different personality, so I'll be fine." Todd handed her the folder and leaned back, grimacing. "How long is the flight?" Sarah leaned forward to talk to the pilot. "What's the ETA? We need to check his wound." "We'll be landing in 15 minutes, ma'am." "Thank you." Sarah wished she had her purse because she knew she had some medicine in it that could at least curb the pain. Having to get all new stuff was seriously annoying. Hopefully they were taking good care of her bags, wherever they took them. The thought crossed her mind again that she should never have replied back to him, but she pushed it aside. He would have had to do all of this on his own, and he would most likely have been dead by now. Besides, it was nice having him around for Christmas. Even with all her family around, it was lonely not having someone, and he'd been fun to hang out with. When the plane touched down several minutes later, Sarah gently nudged Todd awake. "Hey, we're here." He groaned and sat up. "Where is here?" "I actually have no idea." She glanced up at the pilot, but he was too busy navigating the plane. When the doors finally opened, Sarah helped Todd stand and he limped down the stairs first. 2 men sat near an old beat-up Camry. They straightened as Sarah and Todd got closer, and one came over to help Todd walk the rest of the way. "How was the flight?" Braden helped Todd into the back seat. "It was fine. Short." Sarah climbed in next to Todd. "So, do we get to know where we're going on this honeymoon of ours?" The other man turned and pulled off his sunglasses, and Sarah gasped. It was actually Carly in a wig. "You'll find out when you get there. For the most part, you'll just be on a ranch or at the hotel down the road. I don't want you leaving unless you absolutely have to. Should be easy enough. There's plenty of work on a ranch to keep you busy." Sarah gulped. She was in more trouble than she'd thought. "Got it. Once we're there, we're cutting contact, but we'll have other ways of making sure you two are safe. Don't try to get a hold of your parents. I've already explained a little of what's going on. Oh, and your mom wanted you to have these." She picked up a plate of sugar cookies and handed them to Sarah. "Where are the folders?" Sarah gave them both to Carly and stared down at the plate of cookies on her lap, trying to blink back the tears. Too much had already changed. "Thank you, Carly. Sorry for messing things up." Carly's glare softened. "You did what you thought was best, and it turns out you were right. I'm the one who should be apologizing to both of you." Todd coughed. "No apology needed. I hadn't exactly given you any reason to believe me. Still, I should have looked into it anyway. Finding jewelry is what I do, right?" Carly smiled and turned back to the front. The drive to the ranch was only broken up by whispered conversation between Carly and Braden. Sarah was too nervous to say anything, and Todd's head lolled to the side as he slept, snoring and groaning lightly whenever he switched positions. "Wait, where's your baby?" "With his grandpa. We're heading back there soon." Carly turned back around and Sarah held in a sigh. This was going to be a long ride. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a ranch house where several cars were already parked. There wasn't much to see in the dark, but she could just make out a barn and sheds to the left. Most of the lights were out in the house, which made sense. It had to be 1 or 2 in the morning by that time. Carly pulled 3 bags out of the trunk and set them at Sarah's feet. She took Sarah by the shoulders. "Stay safe. Remember everything you've learned from me. No email, no text, nothing. If you do get on the computer, make sure you use the equipment in the bag to scramble your location. We'll get this figured out as soon as we can and get you back home. I need you at the school when the break is over." Sarah nodded. "Got it. And thank you again." "No problem." Carly hugged her quickly and hopped in another car that had pulled up to take her and Braden back to wherever they had come from. Sarah bent down to pick up 2 of the bags, but Todd grabbed the second one. "Are you sure you can carry it?" "I'm not about to show up with you carrying 2 bags while I just have 1. I may be hurt, but I'd still like to think I'm a gentleman." He grunted as he took the first step, but he smiled down at her. "See? I'm just fine." "Sure." Sarah rolled her eyes and grabbed the last bag. Hopefully the 2 Todd had taken weren't as heavy as this one, or he would pop his stitches. They walked up the steps to the ranch house together, and Sarah knocked on the door. A woman answered the door with a wide smile. "London, Weston, it's so good to meet you. Come in." She stood to the side so they could walk in. "Everyone is asleep, so I'll take you right up to your room." Sarah's head spun as she walked through the dimly lit rooms. She followed the woman up the stairs and down the hall. Now, usually people stay in the bunkhouse, but that doesn't quite work when you're married. She laughed and opened the door. "I hope this is to your liking. We have breakfast at 6, but since it's so late, I'll make sure they let you sleep in. London, you'll be helping me inside, and Weston, you'll be outside, once your injury is better." Sarah set her bag on the bed and looked around. It was decorated in old sports posters and boy bands, and the shelves were lined with trophies. "This is perfect." "I would have let you stay in my daughter's room, but she'll be here for the next little while." "Thank you, Mrs. Polton." She held up her hands. "Just call me Angela, please." Sarah nodded and waved as Angela left the room. She turned to Todd, who stood studying the posters on the wall. "How are you feeling?" "Like my side was ripped open." Todd opened the bags and laughed. "They must be joking." Sarah peeked over his shoulder and her eyes widened. The bag was full of flannel shirts, jeans, cowboy boots, and 2 cowboy hats that had seen better days. I don't think they are. She pulled out a pink flannel shirt and jeans. When in Rome, or in this case, on a ranch. Sarah rummaged through until she found a pair of pajamas. She was ready to sleep for a week. I'll change in the bathroom. She took her things inside the small half bathroom and tried on the new clothes. Whoever had picked them was spot on with the sizes. She changed quickly, then brushed her teeth. She frowned in the mirror at her blonde hair. They hadn't had a chance to color it yet, and that was an essential part of her new look. Sleeping would have to wait a little longer. Sarah went back to the bag and found the hair dye inside. Angela knew what was going on, but no one else did, so Sarah needed to get her hair fixed tonight. Hey, Weston? Any chance you know how to cut hair? Not well enough that you'd want to leave this room after I did it. Todd picked up his box of bleach. Have you done this before? Nope, but we don't have much of a choice. Sarah went into the bathroom and found a few garbage bags under the sink. After the dye was mixed, she carefully applied it to her hair, making sure that she didn't miss any of the strands and that she got the roots. She fought back tears as her blonde was replaced by a darker brown color. Hopefully it would look better once the dye was washed out. Sarah took the plastic bag that held the dye and wrapped it around her hair like a shower cap, then turned to Todd. Your turn. He sat in the chair while Sarah applied the dye to his hair. His dark curls would soon be lighter and much shorter, which was too bad. When she was done, Todd smiled at her in the mirror. You said you've never done this before, but it looks like you're quite the expert. Nope, but my sister Anne is a hairstylist, and I watched her often enough while I was at her house studying or getting away from roommates. Sarah checked the clock for her hair, then went to see if Carly had packed phones for either of them so she could use them as a timer. She pulled out 2 smartphones and handed one to Todd. Thank heavens she didn't get us flip phones. I would have gone crazy. Todd stared at his. This is the 2nd new phone I got today. Sarah sighed. Hopefully it's the last you'll have to get for a while. While they waited for the timers to go off, Sarah and Todd went through their bags of things. One had been packed for each of them, and the third was full of essentials. Toothbrushes, brushes, cheap laptops, and new IDs, among other things. Sarah washed her hair out in the bathtub, leaning over as far as she could to make sure that none of the dye got on the walls or fixtures. She couldn't bring herself to look into the mirror, so she went out to find Todd. They tried to wash his out in the sink first, but he couldn't get his head down in far enough, and there were no cups to use either. I'll just use the tub like you did. Todd leaned over and turned on the water, washing his hair out the best he could. Sarah took over when his breathing came in gasps and made sure the rest of the bleach was out. His hair would have to be dyed one more time to get it the right color, but this would work for tonight. There were enough guys downstairs with cowboy hats on that no one would even blink an eye. She handed him a towel and then went back into the bedroom to brush her hair. Since Todd had never cut hair before and she didn't trust herself, she'd just pull it up into a bun and deal with it tomorrow, when she could handle the idea that her hair would be different now. Chapter 4. Todd avoided looking in the mirror while he brushed his teeth. The orange blonde color was definitely not his favorite. He'd just gotten it back to the right color and had to do it all over again. At least it was better than the bleached blonde he had before while he was in Florida for protective custody. Well, it would be once he finished the next round of dye. He left the bathroom and stumbled into the room where Sarah lay asleep on a pile of blankets on the floor. So much for him being the gentleman. The wound in his side annoyed him to no end. He couldn't believe that he'd been so close to those who were coming after him. And not only that, but they'd been shooting at both him and Sarah. She should have ditched him in Jackson Hole. The lack of city noise was almost deafening as Todd lay there in the dark. Sarah let out a soft snore as she switched positions, and a baby cried somewhere in the house. Not being able to do any research was driving him crazy more than anything else. There had to be a way to get an untraceable server here so he could help his grandparents out. Of course, trying to use it right now would defeat the purpose of being dropped off in the middle of nowhere. He sighed and rolled over, determined to sleep. It was safe here, much safer than he'd been in Florida. There, they'd have to have guards all around the house, and even then, some of his parents' old contacts had managed to find him. When sleep didn't come after another hour, Todd climbed out of bed and grabbed the dye from his bag. Might as well get it done now. He missed Sarah's fingers running through his hair as she applied the dye, but he'd watched carefully so he'd know how to do it himself. Hopefully, the sandy blonde would actually work so he didn't look like a clown with the orange hair he had now. When there was just a little left in the bottle, he went over all of the edges of his hair again to make sure he wouldn't have any spots left over. True, he could just wear his hat the whole time, but that wasn't really his style. While he waited for the processing time to finish, Todd pulled up a map on his phone and tried to find the closest civilization. Surely they had somewhere to shop around here. A small town wasn't too far away, and then, farther out, he found Burley and Twin Falls. Still small compared to what he was used to, but instead of annoying him, it helped him feel even safer. No one would look for him here. Maybe he'd stay here even after everything had cleared up. Todd smirked, like he could survive a small town. The alarm on his phone beeped and he quickly turned it off so it wouldn't wake Sarah. It was a little harder to wash his hair out without her in there, but he managed. The orange was gone now, and the blonde almost looked natural. It was too bad Carly and Braden told him he had to cut his curls off. They looked pretty good this color. Once his hair was dry enough to lie back down, he scrolled through the news. That was safe enough, right? As long as he avoided certain keywords, he could see if anything else had popped up. All that he found was stuff on last-minute deals and where celebrities would be spending their holidays. Things were still okay for now. He rolled over and closed his eyes, the sound of Sarah's steady breathing finally helping him drift off. The light coming in from the windows was blinding. Todd listened to the activity throughout the house, unwilling to get out of bed. Sarah still slept on the floor, and hopefully she'd sleep for a little while longer. They'd missed breakfast hours ago, which meant lunch would be coming soon. That sounded like a nice time to get out of bed. A light knock came at the door and Todd groaned. So much for staying in bed. He rolled over and climbed out, grimacing at the pain in his side. If anything, it hurt worse this morning. Angela stood outside the door, a basket full of bandages, scissors, and a few other things hanging on one arm. And in her hands, she held 2 plates of food. Todd quickly opened the door the rest of the way and took the plates from her. We could have gone downstairs. I know, but I wanted to make sure everything was set before you meet anyone else on the ranch. Only my husband and I know what's going on, and we'd like to keep it that way. She set the basket on the bed. While she's still sleeping, let's take care of the bandages. Sit on the bed and pull your shirt off. Todd blinked. What? I need to clean it up and your shirt will get in the way. Angela took out some cotton balls and a few other bottles that Todd eyed suspiciously. You don't think you're the first guy I've seen with his shirt off, do you? We work on a ranch. Injuries are part of the experience. She had a point. Todd finally pulled off his shirt and let her pull the bandages off. He could barely see the injury because of where it was on his side, but the redness around it didn't look great. Is it infected? No, just irritated. You probably slept on it last night. Her movements were quick and sure, proving that she'd done this more than once. You're lucky this wasn't any deeper. He gripped the blanket next to him, determined not to submit to the pain. Right now, I'm not feeling so lucky. Angela laughed. No, I can't imagine you do. Once she had it cleaned out, she applied fresh gauze and then wrapped the bandage around his waist several times. It's not pretty, but it'll keep it clean. We'll check it again tonight. Thank you. Todd slipped his shirt back on and turned his attention to the food on the plate. Biscuits and gravy, bacon, and eggs. It was much better than the coffee and toast he normally had. This looks amazing. Thanks. I kept it warm for you. She stood and cleaned up the bandages, then came back to stand in front of him, studying his hair. You did a pretty good job. Once you're done eating, we'll cut it. She went to the door. I'll be back in a minute. I need to check on lunch. I'd wake her up soon or she won't sleep tonight." Todd nodded and took a bite of the bacon. It was still warm and crispy, just how he liked it. He ate the rest of it and then knelt on the floor next to Sarah. "Hey, Sarah. London. You need to wake up." Sarah rolled over and groaned. The blankets came down from over her head and Todd leaned back in surprise. Her once blonde hair was now a dark brown. It was beautiful still, but threw him for a loop. She opened one eye. "Hey, you fixed your hair. It looks good." She blinked and pushed herself up to sitting. Mine, on the other hand. "I like it." He stood and staggered over to the bed. Standing up that way hadn't been a good idea, and he hoped he hadn't pulled the stitches. "Angela brought us food. Eat up. When she gets back, she'll help us finish our hair." Sarah joined him on the bed and picked up her plate. "Now this is what I'm talking about. I'm starving." That could have something to do with not really eating since lunch yesterday. Todd finished his bacon and moved on to the eggs. "I think I'm going to gain about 50 pounds living here." "Just wait till they put you to work. Then you'll lose it all again." She closed her eyes. "This is amazing. I haven't had food this good since visiting my cousins on their farm in Washington." Todd stood to answer the knock at the door. "I'm pretty sure I've never tasted anything this good. Like I said, I'm in trouble." Angela came in with scissors and a hair-cutting cape and started setting things up at the dressing table. She turned and held up the scissors. "Who wants to go first?" "I'll go. London can finish eating." Todd sat in the chair in front of Angela and sat still while Angela attached the cape and combed through his hair. "Just how short are you going?" "We'll see when I'm done." She chuckled and combed out a section of hair before cutting it. "As soon as this is done, I'll need to go down and serve lunch. I could use your help. We're having our Christmas party here tonight instead of at Rachel's hotel, which means I have a lot of cooking to do for that too. Please tell me you know your way around the kitchen." Todd coughed. "Not so much." "I do, and I can teach Weston while we work." Sarah stood to the side. "A little more off the sides, I think, and it looks great." Angela nodded. "Thanks. There's not a whole lot to do outside right now, so I'll keep Weston from working outside. That wound is still fresh, and I'd rather not have anything happen to it." "I'd prefer that too." Todd turned his head to check out his haircut and had to admit she'd done a pretty good job. "You've done this before, haven't you?" "We have a ranch full of men who need haircuts." She turned to Sarah. "Your turn." Todd grabbed clothes out of the bag and went to the bathroom to change. He couldn't shower yet, so he used a washcloth before changing into the new clothes he'd been given. The jeans weren't exactly comfortable, but the flannel shirt wasn't bad. He combed his hair and added a little gel to keep it in place. Angela still stood in front of Sarah cutting her hair, so Todd put his clothes in a pile on the floor until he could figure out where to wash them, and turned to see how Sarah's hair looked. His eyes widened. Sarah's hair, that had once been a few inches past her shoulders, was now in an A-line cut that framed her face. Angela took some gel and rubbed it in her hands before running it through Sarah's hair to make it spike out a little in the back. "What do you think?" Angela smiled at Todd in the mirror. "It's a little out of my expertise, but thanks to a few online videos, I think I did a pretty good job." Wow, it looks great." Todd couldn't get any other words out. Sarah stood and went to her bag to pull out a makeup bag. "I guess I should finish the look. Thank you." Angela nodded and bent down to pick up the hair. "I'll come back with a vacuum later." "Thanks so much. We'll be down to help in a minute." Sarah beamed at her and waited until Angela had shut the door before burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook as she cried. Todd took her by the elbow and pulled her up so he could wrap his arms around her. He grimaced when her arm brushed his injury, but still held her close. "It really does look beautiful, and when this is all over, you can grow it back out if you want." "That's the problem," she laughed through her tears. "I actually love it." Todd chuckled. "Change isn't fun, but sometimes it's exactly what we need." She stepped away and wiped her eyes. "Thank you for letting me cry. It's silly, I know. Hey, I wasn't exactly thrilled with my orange hair last night. I get it. Todd picked his boots up out of the bag. I really have to wear these? Every cowboy needs his boots. Besides, I've heard they're comfortable. Sarah smirked. I'm not so sure about that, but we'll pretend it's true. She sat back down and pulled out her makeup. This could take a bit, so if you want to go down to the kitchen to see what Angela needs, I'll meet you down there. Todd hesitated. As soon as he left this room, he'd have to admit that everything had changed, that he was now living on a ranch. Of course, sitting here watching Sarah put on makeup wasn't exactly exciting. He opened the door and closed it behind him. If he remembered right, he came from the left the night before. He walked down the hallway and found the stairs. The house was mostly quiet as he walked through the living room and into the kitchen. Angela stood at one of the counters rolling out dough, while another girl about Todd's age sat at a table feeding a baby. He must have been who Todd heard the night before. There you are. If you could help cut these rolls out, I can check on the roast. Angela held out what looked like a circle cookie cutter. Sounds good. He took the piece from her and cut the circles out of the dough like he'd done with the sugar cookies the morning before. London should be down in just a minute. Angela took the dough that he'd just finished with and bunched back up into a ball. Okay, roll it out again and then make some more, unless that bothers your side. I should be fine. He wasn't, though. Each time he rolled forward and started back, his injury would yell at him. But it wouldn't take much longer, and he was supposed to be helping, not making things harder. The girl at the table stood and brought a bowl over to the sink. I'm Rachel, by the way. I haven't seen you around here before, have I? No, we just got in. We're going to be helping your parents out while we find a place of our own. Todd held out a flour-covered hand. I'm Weston. Rachel beamed. It's nice to meet you, and you came at just the right time. Christmas is pretty big here on the ranch. It looks like it. He stopped rolling. Wait, Rachel, your mom said something about a hotel? Yeah, it's just up the road from here. The ceiling leaked and messed up the dance floor. Old houses can be a real pain. She rinsed out a washcloth and took it over to wash the baby's face. We decided it was best to move the party here tonight, but that's a good thing for you. It means you can get to know people faster. Todd nodded. Finding out their names was one thing. Trying to remember them later would be the tricky part. He stopped rolling. Is this thin enough? It's perfect. Angela set the roast back in one of the ovens and then added the pan of rolls into the other oven. There you are. I got all turned around. Sarah came into the kitchen smiling. Her makeup was much thicker than usual, but it looked good. Dark red lipstick accented her perfect lips. If he hadn't seen the transformation, he wouldn't have known it was the same girl he'd met 2 days before. Rachel lifted her baby out of the high chair. It's easy to do in here. I'm Rachel. Sarah bent down to pick up the bottle the baby had dropped. I'm London. And who is this cutie? This is Evan. I hope he didn't keep you up last night. I sleep through everything. Todd finished with the last of the rolls and washed his hands in the sink. What else needs to be done? Angela pointed to the pantry. We need all of the paper products taken out and set on the table. I'll have London do that. Why don't you start on the veggie tray? Everything is in the fridge. We just need to cut everything and set them out. Then you can make the dip. Sarah went into the pantry to get the plates and cups, and Todd went to the fridge. Several bags of celery, carrots, and peppers sat on one of the shelves. He pulled them all out and set them on the counter. He'd gotten through 2 bags of carrots when an older man burst through the door. He grabbed a cup from the cupboard and filled it with water. We could use some help out there. We had applesauce get loose again. Oh dear, Rachel? Angela frowned. No, I need you to help with the desserts. Weston, could you help? You can just drive one of the trucks if you would like. Todd set down his knife and stood. As much as he was enjoying the company, he was anxious to get out of the house. Sure. Carl threw him the keys. You take the west side. Drive slowly. She likes to hide. That was easy enough, right? Except he had no idea which truck he was supposed to be taking, or if he even knew how to drive it. He followed Carl outside and stopped. They really were in the middle of nowhere. The ranch was huge. But otherwise, there was nothing as far as he could see. Mountains stood in the distance, but otherwise there was nothing but fields. Shouts pulled him back to the present, and he ran to the lot full of cars. He checked the keys to find out what kind of truck it was, and settled on the blue Chevy near the front. That had to be it. He climbed inside and started it up, gunning the engine. Whoops. He wasn't supposed to do that. Once everything was set how he liked it, Todd crept forward and followed the other ranchers out into the field. It wasn't until he was driving along the side of the field that he realized he had no idea what an applesauce was. He stopped and texted Sarah. "Can you ask Angela what I'm supposed to be looking for?" Moments later, Sarah finally texted back. "Brown horse. Usually likes the orchard, but they already checked there. Thanks." Brown horse. He could do that. The rows in the field jarred his injury as he bounced up and down, but it wasn't enough to do any damage to it. He probably should have taken something for the pain that morning, but he'd forgotten. Movement caught his eye, and he looked over near the edge of the farmland, but it was just another one of the ranchers. He continued on as snowflakes began to fall, light at first. By the time Carl had waved them back, an inch or more had fallen. Todd did his best to turn around in the truck, but it was getting harder to maneuver in the snow. Carl climbed down from his horse and jogged over. He waited for Todd to scoot over, then climbed in. "Sorry, turning here can be pretty tricky once the ground is wet." "It's fine. Did you find the horse?" Todd blew on his hands to warm them up. He wasn't expecting to be caught in a snowstorm. "Justin did. He's got her back in the corral." Carl hit the gas to make it over another row. "You really got this stuck." Todd grinned sheepishly. "Sorry about that." "It's fine. This isn't the first time we've gotten stuck out here." Carl was silent for a moment as he got them past the last row. "So, tell me, how is it being a rancher after living in the city your whole life?" Todd shrugged. "It's way different, but it's pretty cool. I like how wide open it is out here." Carl chuckled. "Wide open is right." They parked the truck and Todd climbed out. "Is there anything else you need?" "I could use some help with the cows if you want to stay out here. Shouldn't take too long." "Sure." Todd followed Carl into the barn. The warmth of the barn enveloped him as they walked inside. Cows lined one side with machines humming next to them. Carl handed him some gloves and laughed. "I should have known. Rachel and Patrick are here, which means all the work gets done before I ask." Patrick came around the corner. "I thought I heard voices. Did you find applesauce?" "Yep. Who's left?" Carl pulled on his gloves and grabbed 2 of the stools. "I just started, so there are a few more. Oh, and I had to call for more parts. The 2 machines on the end aren't working right." Carl frowned. "Great. Thanks for calling that in." "No problem. As soon as I'm done here, I'm going back to the hotel to see what can be done there." Patrick saluted and went back to work. Carl set the tools down on the ground and pointed at one of them. "You stay here. I'll go get us 2 cows. Milk buckets are over there. Set them by the stools." Todd nodded and did what Carl said. He blew on his hands to warm them up, wishing he had the coat and gloves he'd bought in Jackson Hole. His wound stung, and all he wanted to do right then was go back to sleep. Carl brought back 2 cows and led them next to Todd. "I don't suppose you've ever done this before?" "Nope. Grew up in Texas, but I never went to a ranch." Todd eyed the animal. "It won't kick me, right?" "Not if you do it right." Carl chuckled and bent down next to Todd. "Watch and do exactly what I'm doing. You have to get the pressure just right." Todd took over and grinned when milk came out. "It worked." "Yes, it did. Now keep going." Carl stepped over to the other cow and sat down. While they worked, Patrick walked back and forth, guiding the other cows to the milker and back to the pen. "Couldn't we have just put these 2 on the milker?" Todd's hands were cramping, and the strain of bending over was making his wound hurt even more. "We could have, but then you never would have been able to say you milked a cow, right?" Carl stood and grabbed both milk buckets. "Go inside and lie down. You're pale. Tell Angela I'll be in soon." Todd nodded and went back to the house, doing his best to stay upright. Angela looked up when he walked inside, and her eyes widened. "Oh dear, let's get you upstairs." She and Sarah rushed over to him and helped him up the stairs. He collapsed on the bed, but kept his shoes off the side so he wouldn't mess up the sheets. Sarah pulled them off while Angela pulled his jacket off and lifted his shirt. Her sharp intake of breath wasn't very reassuring. "You're bleeding. What were you doing?" "Milking a cow." He kept his eyes closed, sweat pouring off him. "That man," Angela mumbled under her breath. "London, I need you to peel off the bandage while I run and grab my things. If we can't get it to stop, I'm going to have to call in a doctor." Sarah moved closer to him and pulled lightly on the bandage. Her fingers tickled his side as she worked, and the pleasure from that mixed with the pain of the wound. She cringed each time she pulled off another piece of the bandage. When she got to the actual sore, he gasped in pain. It was like she'd pulled off his skin. "Sorry, I'm trying to be careful." She bit her lip. He searched for her hand and squeezed. "I know." Angela came in with the same basket she'd had last night. She stopped to examine him before setting everything on the bed. "It looks better than I expected. None of the stitches popped, so we're lucky that way. We're just going to keep you inside for a while longer." "I'm not going to argue with that." He didn't let go of Sarah's hand as Angela worked. Her touch was the only thing keeping him from screaming. She smoothed his hair, and Todd concentrated on her fingers and not the pain that shot through his body with every dab of the cotton. "When was your last dose of pain meds?" Angela asked as she rubbed a salve over the wound. He shook his head. "I don't even know. Probably when I got the stitches done yesterday." "Well, there's part of the problem." She set the bandage and nodded toward the basket. "London, there's some meds in the basket there. Grab him a few and some water from the bathroom sink." She held up a bandage. "Can you sit long enough for me to wrap this around you?" Todd pushed up to sitting, trying to keep the world from spinning. He took the pills Sarah offered him while Angela finished with the bandage, then laid back down, willing himself not to lose the breakfast he'd had that morning. "I'll send some lunch up to you. I'd just let you sleep, but you need to have something in your stomach with those pills." Angela picked up the basket. "Come down when you're ready, but don't push it. We don't need your cover blown by a trip to the hospital." He nodded and closed his eyes. Maybe he shouldn't have gone out and helped with the cows, but after everything he'd done to mess up over the years, this felt good and honest. And it was exactly what he needed right now. Chapter 5. Sarah tapped her fingers nervously on the counter. She'd helped make cookies, a cake, and some mini pastries, and Todd still wasn't awake. Party guests would be arriving soon, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that. "You've helped out a lot, London. Why don't you go upstairs and take a quick nap? I can do the rest." Angela smiled. "I think I'll take you up on that." Sarah took the steps 2 at a time, anxious to get away. Angela reminded Sarah so much of her mom, and it made all of this even harder. Right now, she would be reading old Christmas stories with the family after skiing all day. Sarah opened the door slowly so she wouldn't disturb Todd. He'd barely stirred when she came up with his lunch earlier. She used the light on her phone to find her clothes, then tiptoed into the bathroom. The hot shower felt good after working in the kitchen all day. While she loved to bake with her family, she hadn't done anything this intense before. And to think it was what Angela and Rachel did every single day for the people who worked here. Sarah turned off the shower and combed through her hair. It felt so strange having it short now, but it did look good. Not that she wasn't looking forward to going back to her blonde when all this was done, but it was fine for now. Since it was a Christmas party, Sarah decided to go with the long black skirt and a red blouse. She applied the makeup she'd been given, so much bolder than she'd ever gone with before, and then added a necklace. It was her own, but she couldn't bear not to wear it. Carly could yell at her later. Once she was ready, she stepped out of the bathroom and stopped in shock. The light was on, and Todd sat on the bed doing his best to put his shirt on. He kept gasping with each movement. Sarah pushed down the heat in her face from seeing his bare back and dropped her clothes on the bed. Here, let me. She helped with his sleeves and then quickly turned away to hide her blush. He was a lot more in shape than she'd noticed before. Feeling better? I'm still hurting, but the nap definitely helped. I didn't sleep much last night. Todd reached down to put on his boots and grunted. Think you could... Sarah knelt down and slipped his boots on. There you go. Here, you missed a button. She fixed it and looked up at him. His face was just inches from hers. His gaze dropped to her lips, and Sarah swallowed hard. She straightened his collar and cleared her throat. Ready to go? Todd opened the bedroom door, looking a little disappointed. He forced a smile and gave a fake bow. After you, Mrs. Matthews. Sarah laughed, but her heart skipped a beat. They walked down the stairs together and joined the rest of the party in the kitchen. It was crowded in there while everyone dished up their food. You go in and find a place to sit. I'll fill our plates. Todd shot her a look of panic, but nodded and went into the living room. Sarah chose a few of the things she'd made and then added the roast, rolls, and mashed potatoes. Everything smelled so good, she wanted to try all of it. Sarah weaved her way through the crowd, trying to adjust to the fact that she'd be spending the next little while with all of them. Whether it was 2 days or a year, these were the people who would be helping keep her and Todd's identity safe. And she had to figure out who she could trust and who to stay away from. A few of the older ladies were definitely trouble. The younger people that were around her age seemed pretty cool, though. Sarah handed Todd a plate of food and sat next to him. No one to talk to, huh? No, it's not that. I just don't have much to say when I don't know them. Todd took a bite of the mini pastries and groaned. This is amazing. Try yours. I see you found my mom's famous pies. Rachel stood next to them, holding Evan. Todd held his up. This is amazing. Mom only makes them for holidays. They're pretty popular around here, if you couldn't tell. We can see by the party here. Does everyone work here? Sarah asked. Some of them do. Most of the ranch hands have gone home for the winter to be with their families. The others come from town. We've been doing this at my hotel for the last few years, but our roof leaked onto the ballroom floor. Sarah sighed. I think it's so cool you own a hotel. I always thought it would be fun to do something like that. Rachel sat on the edge of the couch. It was my dream for as long as I could remember. We opened it a few years ago, and it's been the best. Well, it's a little crazy in the spring and summer when I go between the hotel and the ranch, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'll bet. Sarah nodded toward the kitchen when she saw Angela waving. I think your mom wants you. Oh, we probably need to stock things up. Rachel stood and followed her mom into the kitchen, but came back a few seconds later. She actually needs you and Todd. She said it's urgent. Sarah's stomach dropped. She avoided Rachel's curious look as she stood to see what was going on. They hadn't been found out already, had they? Todd took her hand and they moved through the crowd until they got to the kitchen. Angela stood at the doorway talking to someone at the front door. She moved out of the way to reveal a police officer. No, wait. Dee? What was she doing here dressed like that? Sarah raised an eyebrow when Dee met her eyes. Is there something wrong, officer? Todd asked. It seems your moving truck was stolen en route to the house. We need you to identify your belongings. Dee's serious face almost had Sarah believing her. Todd frowned. Did you catch the guys who did it? Dee nodded. They're in custody. Now, if you'll come with me. By that time, several people were staring at them. Sarah grabbed the coat Angela handed her and followed Dee out into the snowy yard. No one spoke until they reached a truck out on the road. Dee turned to them. Listen, things are worse than what we thought. They've tracked down Todd's parents, and we had to relocate your parents as well. Don't worry, everyone is okay. Well, I'm not sure about Todd's parents. Sorry about that. We're trying to figure that part out. What can we do? Todd's voice was tight. Nothing. We're not too far away from you, so we can come if needed. Dee gave Sarah a quick hug before putting her hand on the door of the truck. You two stay safe and stay in character. And if anyone comes here that Angela doesn't recognize, run. Got it?" Sarah nodded. "Have a safe trip back to wherever you're staying." "Thanks, and Merry Christmas." "Oh, wait." Dee grabbed a coat and a sweater out of the car. "That's all you had left in the truck. Everything else was impounded for evidence." Sarah held the sweater close. It was a piece of her past life. "Thank you." Dee shut the door and the truck sped off into the night. Todd wrapped an arm around Sarah's waist and they walked back to the house. "That was weird." Todd looked down at Sarah. "Last time I was, they never ever contacted me." "Yeah, I wonder if things are worse than what they're willing to tell me." Sarah shivered. "What if my parents were taken too?" Todd shook his head. "She would have told us. They're fine and they're in good hands, right? Come on. People are going to wonder why we're just standing out on the porch." Sarah opened the door and slipped her snowy boots off by the door, then headed for the stairs. She didn't want to hold the sweater if no one was paying enough attention to ask. Angela nodded toward them as they passed, but otherwise didn't say anything. Todd took the sweater from her and dropped both of them on the bed, then turned Sarah to face him. "It's going to be okay." "How can you even say that? Your parents were taken." Sarah's voice broke at the last word. "You don't know my parents. Whoever took them is going to regret ever coming near them." Todd chuckled. "We could stay up here if you don't want to face people." Sarah was tempted. She could use the sleep, and being around people when her family was in danger didn't sound very appealing. But then music floated up from downstairs. It was just one person singing until the chorus when everyone else joined in. I think we should go down. I'm not letting what's happening get in the way of me having a good Christmas." "Sounds good to me." He ran his thumb along her jawline, and Sarah's breath caught. She stared up into his eyes, trying to convince herself to move. The song downstairs ended, and everyone cheered before they started shouting out song requests. Footsteps came down the hallway toward them, and Sarah jumped back, getting into a fighting stance. Not that she knew how to fight, but no one should have been up here. She poked her head out to see a man with Evan walking past, Todd right behind her. "Oh, hey." "Hey, Weston, right?" The man held his hand out to Todd and then turned to Sarah. "I'm Rachel's husband, Patrick, and you're London, right? Rachel told me you two are staying here for a while. That's pretty cool." "Yeah, we're loving it here so far." Sarah gestured to Evan. "Didn't want to stay up any longer, huh?" Patrick laughed. "No, he just doesn't like it when his mama wants to sing and can't hold him at the same time." Sarah raised her eyebrows. Was that her singing just a minute ago? "Isn't she good? We host concerts every once in a while, so she can have her chance to sing. Not quite like performing in California, but it makes her happy." "She's amazing." Sarah shifted in the awkward silence that followed. "I'll let you get him to bed. It's nice to meet you, Patrick." He waved and went into the room next to theirs. Todd stayed quiet as they walked downstairs. They stood in the back of the room and listened to Rachel sing a few Christmas carols. She really was fantastic. Sarah wondered what Patrick meant about her singing in California. Rachel spotted them in the back after the first Noel and waved to them. "We have a fun new couple who just moved in that I want to introduce you all to. Weston and London, meet everyone else." Sarah forced a smile as everyone turned to look at them. Rachel really wasn't a part of their secret, was she? Otherwise, she wouldn't have drawn attention to them. Sarah caught Angela's frown and wondered if she'd say anything. It took a second to realize everyone was still staring at them. Rachel smiled at them expectedly. Todd leaned down. "We're, standing under mistletoe." Sarah followed his finger to see the small sprig above them. She gulped. Dozens of eyes were on them. "What do you think, guys? Should they kiss?" Rachel grinned, and everyone started to chant the word kiss. No, she definitely didn't know who they were. Sarah taught classes of 200 or more students, but she had never been so nervous as she was right then. She met Todd's eyes, and before she could argue, he put a hand on her cheek and bent to kiss her. The small zing of electricity she felt every time they touched was 10,000 times stronger as his lips touched hers. The kiss was short and ended with a cheer from the crowd before the music started up again, but Sarah still felt his lips on hers minutes after he'd pulled away. After a few more songs, the crowd began to disperse. Everyone went through the kitchen to get their eggnog milkshakes on the way out of the house. Sarah found a bag under the sink and went through the living room picking up garbage, while Angela and Rachel said goodnight to everyone. Todd picked up the cups to dump out in the sink and put them in another bag. They'd barely spoken since the kiss, and Sarah wasn't sure she wanted to bring it up. Not yet, anyway. Angela and Rachel stood in the kitchen talking quietly when Sarah finally gathered up the last of the trash. "Where would you like this?" She held up the bag. "Just set it outside the door and Carl can take it to the dumpster in the morning." Angela handed Sarah a cup of eggnog. "Thank you for doing that. Saves me a lot of time." She left the room and Rachel leaned forward. "I hope I didn't upset you with the whole mistletoe thing. I just wanted to introduce you to everyone and then noticed the mistletoe." "It's fine. I mean, we're married." Sarah could feel her face redden. She needed to change the subject. "You did a great job tonight. Patrick said you do concerts?" "Sometimes. I had 2 dreams growing up. Being a singer and owning this hotel. Now I get to do both." Rachel leaned against the counter. Sarah took a drink of her eggnog and was surprised to find ice cream in it. "Is this a milkshake?" "Yep, it's my favorite part of Christmas. Well, one of them." Rachel yawned. "I'd better get to bed so I can head over to the hotel in the morning. Good night." She went upstairs, leaving Todd and Sarah alone in the kitchen. Sarah didn't know what to say to him, so she kept her attention on her milkshake. Todd threw his cup away and stared out the window. "It's snowing again." He turned toward her. "They're huge flakes." Sarah joined him at the window. "I don't think I've seen flakes that big before." "I know I haven't." Todd hesitated. "We should talk." "Yes, we should. I just don't know what to say." Sarah smiled up at him. Angela came into the kitchen with the last of the garbage. "I'm off to bed. We'll be up early in the morning to feed all of the ranchers. There aren't as many with it being Christmas soon, but those who stayed to help with the animals will need to be fed." "Sounds good." Sarah yawned. "I think I'm headed off to bed as well. I'll be up to help you." Todd followed closely behind and grabbed his clothes to change in the bathroom. Sarah changed quickly and climbed into the blankets on the floor. If she could fall asleep before he came out of the bathroom, they wouldn't have to talk. She wouldn't have to admit she enjoyed the kiss and had hoped there would be more as soon as they broke apart. It was too soon. Sarah was awake before the alarm went off the next morning. The kiss from the night before kept running through her mind, and it kept her from drifting off again. After a quick shower, she headed down to the kitchen where Angela was already busy making breakfast. "Morning, London. How'd you sleep?" "Wonderful, thank you. Nothing like total quiet after living in the city my whole life." Sarah took over buttering the toast so Angela could take the cinnamon rolls into the dining room. Todd came downstairs and yawned, heading straight for the ibuprofen. "Hey." "That bad, huh?" "Yeah, I barely slept." He yawned and grabbed a glass from the cupboard. "I was surprised to see you already out of bed when I woke up." Sarah picked up the plate of toast. "I figured I'd get started early this morning." A door opened and laughter was followed by voices. Todd and Sarah headed to the dining room to find the ranchers gathering around the cinnamon rolls and hot chocolate that had been set out for breakfast. Sarah set the toast down and went to get the bacon. Once everyone was served, Sarah and Todd got their food and sat at the table. Sarah tried to follow the conversations to figure out who everyone was, but she finally gave up. It would come if they were here long enough. "So, Weston, where did you two move from?" one of the guys asked. "Chicago." Todd didn't look up from his food. "That's quite a difference from here." The man laughed. "I'm Justin, by the way." Todd finally looked up. "Do you live here too?" Justin shook his head. "I have a house in town, but I knew they needed some help. I'm heading there as soon as I'm done eating." Sarah raised an eyebrow. Your family won't miss you? It's Christmas. We have a newborn, so any chance Laura has to sleep in, I'm going to let her take it. I'll wake them up when I get there. Speaking of which, I should probably go now. He popped the last bite in his mouth. If you guys are in town, you should come and say hi. Will do. Sarah turned her attention to Todd. Why so quiet? He shook his head. I'll tell you later. Sarah leaned forward. Did you hear something? Just wait. He stood and threw his plate away, then grabbed another mug of hot chocolate. Sarah frowned and finished the last of her food. In the time she'd known Todd, he hadn't been this quiet. Something was up, and she wanted to know what it was. They left the room together and went to the kitchen to make sure there wasn't anything that needed to be done. Angela was still busy with her family in the living room, so Todd and Sarah went back up to their room to talk. Sarah climbed on the bed, and Todd paced the room. He finally stopped and turned to Sarah. Nothing has been in the news. Nothing. At first I thought that was a good thing, but you'd think if they were trying to stop a bunch of kidnappings, it would be more of a news story. You're not supposed to be checking the news. Todd waved away her concern. I'm not logged in anywhere, so they don't have a way to trace me. Believe me, I don't want to be caught any more than you do. Sarah stood and took him by the shoulders. Listen, you have the best possible team trying to figure out what's going on. And staying right here is the only way to stay safe. For us to stay safe, yes. But what about my parents? What about yours? We're just sitting here hanging out and people are getting away with... Sarah covered his mouth to keep him from shouting. I know, but messing up right now won't help anyone else. We'll figure it out, I promise. Maybe we can go into town tomorrow and see if we can learn anything. Todd stared into her eyes for a moment before finally nodding. Sarah dropped her hand and stepped away. You're right. He ran his fingers through his hair and dropped to the bed. Everything is closed today anyway. Exactly. Come on, let's go see if we can help with lunch. Sarah held a hand out and he took it. The house was quieter when they got back downstairs. Angela and Rachel were busy putting lunch together, and Evan sat in his high chair eating cereal. Sarah took over the salads, and Todd helped with the rolls again. We'll only have the family and you two today. Everyone else headed home after breakfast. Rachel's here to make sure that I don't make enough to feed an army, because that's what I normally make. Sarah glanced down at the 2 trays of rolls and back up at Angela. I can see that. Angela chuckled. Thankfully, these can be used tomorrow for lunch. It's the rest of the meal that I'm worried about. I'm in charge of potatoes for that reason, although I'm not sure I'm a good person for that either. Rachel dropped a handful of chopped potatoes into the pot. Lucky for you both, I eat enough to feed an army, so we're good. Todd grinned as he put the last of the rolls on a pan. What else do you need to get ready? Angela pointed to a cupboard. The table needs to be set. The nice dishes are in there. We need enough for 6 of us. Sarah finished the salad and went over to help get the dishes down. The china had delicate blue flowers on them, and while they looked fragile, they were pretty heavy. After the first pile of dishes, Todd had to sit down. You take care of the napkins, and I'll finish. Sarah patted him on the shoulder. We don't want you to hurt yourself again. You finally seem like you're feeling a little better, and I'd like to keep it that way. Todd sighed. Fair enough. It still hurts enough that I know I can't do much for another day or so, which annoys me to no end. Sarah set the table and filled the cups with water while Todd folded and placed the napkins. By the time they were done, Patrick and Carl had joined them. Rachel and Angela set everything on the table. Carl sat at the end of the table and sliced the ham. Everything smells wonderful as usual, my dear. Angela beamed. Thank you. I had help. The meal was nearly done when Patrick received a phone call. He glanced at the caller ID and frowned before scooting out his chair and leaving the room. Think that's about the hotel? Angela asked. No, we don't have anyone working today because we're waiting for a shipment to come in. Rachel picked at her food. Things have been tense at his other job recently. Apparently there was some kind of blow-up where a few marketing companies got accused of trying to sell off stolen goods. We thought Patrick's company was safe, but apparently not. Sarah tensed. What kind of stolen goods? Rachel shrugged. He hasn't said much. Jewelry, maybe? Most of what they've found is a hoax. But Patrick thinks there might be more to it than the authorities are letting on. By this time, Todd had gone pale. Sarah reached out and squeezed his hand under the table to help him calm down. Things were looking pretty bad, but they couldn't let Rachel know they had any connection to what was going on. Patrick came back and sat down. Well, we're in the clear, but it looks like they've arrested a few people in connection with it. Todd and Sarah exchanged glances. This could be good news, or it could mean they were in bigger danger than before. They found the people behind the scams? Todd asked. No, it was people at the marketing company who ran the ads. Patrick picked up his fork. Todd shifted in his seat. I didn't know you work for a marketing company. Patrick nodded. I do. Well, mostly. I gave up a lot of control when I moved here, but I still consult with the board and work on different projects when I'm not busy with the ranch or the hotel. That's pretty cool. Todd pushed his plate aside. How do you decide which companies you're going to advertise for? Is there any type of background checks you do before you start? Sarah squeezed his hand again. Honey, this isn't 20 questions. Let's let him eat. Our legal department takes care of that. They check background, how long they've been in business, and their sales numbers, so we know if they can actually pay us for the work we do. But that's just us. Every company does things a little differently. I worked in that part of the company for a while, and I'm glad I got out of it. I like the actual marketing side a lot more, but I usually don't do much of that anymore either. I just make sure things are running smoothly. Todd let go of Sarah's hand and pulled something from his pocket. He unfolded it and handed it to Patrick. Ever seen that logo cross your desk? Sarah could have kicked him. So much for their cover. It wasn't that she didn't trust Rachel, but she barely knew Patrick, and the fewer people who know about them, the better. Patrick glanced at it and raised his eyebrows. Where'd you get this? So you recognize it? It's familiar, but I don't know how. I'd have to ask my team to see if they know where it's from. Why? Patrick handed back the paper. They're the people the police are trying to find. Whoever runs that company stole my grandmother's jewelry and is trying to sell it. The room went silent. Sarah stared down at her plate, and Angela busied herself by taking empty dishes to the sink. Rachel leaned forward. You're not here to settle down, are you? No, it's a beautiful place, but we're here for protection. Sarah's face burned as she finally met Rachel's eyes. And I suppose you both knew about this? Rachel narrowed her eyes at her mom. Angela nodded. Sweetie, you know I couldn't tell you. They had to keep things as quiet as possible. They're not even allowed to go online to research what's going on. Rachel covered her face with her hands, and when she finally looked back at Sarah, her face was bright red. And here I was drawing attention to you last night while I sang. I'm so sorry. You did what? Angela's eyes widened. The mistletoe. Rachel buried her face again. I can't believe I did that. It's just like you to do something so crazy. Angela laughed until tears ran down her face. She does this every year, and people have learned not to be the last two into the room because of it. But of all the people she could have chosen, it was you two? Sarah laughed as well. No wonder the mistletoe was right there. And while the kiss was... well, the kiss was perfect. It had been total luck that they'd been the ones picked. Rachel cleared her throat. It's not that funny. You know it is. Patrick stood. Is it okay if I have that logo? I want to send a picture to my partners. Todd hesitated. I guess so, as long as your phone isn't traceable. I'd hate to have this come back on you. Good point. I'll just ask them about the company without the picture. Be back. Oh, Rachel, the roofing will get here tomorrow. I forgot to tell you that. Patrick left the room again. Rachel picked Evan up. I need to get this little boy to sleep, but just so you know, I'm glad you're here. Mom could use more help around the house. Carl stood up and left the table as well so he could go milk the cows. Angela finished clearing the table and sat down next to them. I agree with Rachel. I'm glad you're here. Just be careful who you talk to, because while I love everyone in this town, there are a few who would love to snatch up the latest gossip. Todd held up his hands in surrender. I get it. When I found out that's what he did for work, I couldn't help asking him questions. I understand, but Weston, I don't want you going after whoever he finds. It's not safe. Todd nodded and stood. Thank you for lunch. It was amazing, as always. Yes, thank you. Sarah yawned. If it's all right with you, I'm going to go take a nap. Is there anything that needs to be done before that? Not today, unless you want to help with the cows. Angela pointed at Todd. Not you, though. Yes, ma'am. Todd went up to their room and Sarah followed after him, fuming. She rounded on him as soon as the door closed. What were you thinking? I was thinking that I'm bored and restless and my parents were taken. Sitting here isn't helping anyone. Todd gestured toward the door. We had what could be a good lead just sitting there, and I had to take it. Sarah clenched her fists and dropped to the bed. Why didn't you just ask me first? This isn't just about you. My family is in danger too, remember? Todd knelt in front of Sarah and took her hands in his. When she refused to look up, he tipped her chin. That's why I need to stop this. I can't bear to have you or your family or the Poltons hurt. Every day we just sit here, things are getting worse, and it's not okay. I need to do something. Do you understand that? Yes, but I still wish you would have asked me first. We just dragged Rachel and Patrick into this. They were dragged into it the second we stepped foot on this property. I know. Sarah reached out and caressed his cheek. I never thought it would be possible to find a guy who was more stubborn than me. Todd laughed. Well, I have to say the same thing about you. She leaned forward and brushed her lips against his. He wrapped his arms around her waist and she pulled him closer, cupping his face in her hands. All the tension from the conversation they'd just had melted away as he ran his fingers through her hair. A knock at the door yanked them apart, and it took a moment for Sarah to remember to breathe. She straightened her blouse and smoothed out her skirt before answering the door. Patrick stood there with his phone in his hand. Sorry, I hope I didn't wake you. I just found out more information about the logo. Todd stood behind Sarah, and the heat between them made Sarah go weak. She opened the door wider so that Todd could talk to Patrick. The reason I recognized it is because it had crossed my desk a couple of months ago. I passed on it, but let one of my partners check into them as well. When they didn't feel good about it either, we rejected the offer and didn't hear anything after that. My friends asked around, and apparently the company tried a few others before SilverScript took them on as clients. Whoever is behind it is very intelligent. They took the reasons we rejected them, fixed the issues, and moved on. Then did the same thing with the next advertising company and the next until they were finally accepted. I don't know if there's an inside man who approved it or if they were really conned into it, but that's where the trail ends. Todd looked through Patrick's notes. Do you happen to know anyone from SilverScript? Not from the New York office, no. We've worked with the LA branch a couple of times. I could get some names, but you can't contact them anyway. Thank you. If you happen to hear anything else, can you let me know? Of course. Patrick turned away but looked back at them. Is that why you're injured? Todd blinked. You could tell? It was obvious the first time we met you. There's a bet going on what you did to yourself. Gunshot. The bullet got me in the side. Sarah held back a laugh at the expression on Patrick's face. It's true. I was there when it happened. Patrick shook his head. No one is even close to being right. I'm sure. Todd paused. If you hear of anything else, let me know. Will do. If I can get past Angela. She's made it clear we're not supposed to talk to you about it. Patrick glanced down the hallway. Which reminds me, I should get going before she catches us talking. Sarah laughed. She doesn't seem like one you want to mess with. Definitely not. Patrick turned and left, and Sarah stared after him. She still couldn't believe that Todd had told him what was going on. She just hoped it wasn't going to cause any more trouble. That was the last thing they needed right now. Chapter 6. Todd stared at the notes in front of him, trying to make sense of everything. He'd been up all night working on them, and the timelines weren't quite working. unless the thieves moved quickly from one house to the next. Either whoever it was had been planning for a year or more, or they sent out multiple proposals at once. Sending out all of the feelers to several ad agencies at once didn't quite work with what Patrick described, which meant it had to be the other case. Who knew how long someone had been eyeing his grandma's jewelry? Sarah rested her chin on his shoulder. Figure anything out yet? Nope, except whoever is doing this was very patient. What I want to know is why they're suddenly snatching up people so quickly. It doesn't make sense. It does, though. Now that the plan is in motion, they only have so long until they get caught. They're having to tie up loose ends. Sarah sorted through the papers. You're sure that all the people disappearing are from the same crime ring you were in? From what I can tell, my parents were pretty faithful to their team, and I don't think they really communicate with anyone else. So, what if it isn't someone outside the ring? What if someone wants all of the money for themselves? Sarah sat in the chair next to him. Todd grabbed another list and handed it to her. I've thought of that, and as much as my parents would argue that it isn't possible, I wouldn't put it past any of them. The top person is the one most likely to betray everyone else. Sarah read through the list and looked back up at Todd. You have your parents at the top of the list? If you knew them, you'd understand why. But the thing is, I don't know that they'd do that. They really are loyal to their team, so stealing from them doesn't make any sense. He found another paper. This is the list of those who would see the most gain from it. I'd think any of them would gain a lot considering the jewels they stole. Sarah went through the names. How well do you know them? Todd shrugged. I saw them off and on when there were jobs to be done, but we didn't exactly hang out. Think they'd be able to track a phone call? Only if they got this number. Just be careful how much you say. Todd picked up another paper. I haven't been able to do research since we lost our phones and computers, but this is the list of jewels already stolen as of a few days ago. That would knock those people off the list. Sarah took that one as well and dialed Carly's number. Hey, I have a few names for you. Todd looked through the lists again to see if he'd missed anything. He would have loved to have his other research back, but that wasn't going to happen. No, I'm not. These names are from Todd. They're a list of the ring his parents are a part of in the order of those who stand to gain the most from it. A moment later, Sarah listed the names and then went through the other list of those who'd had things stolen. Sarah sighed with relief. So there's an end in sight? Moments later, she hung up. Done. Todd looked up. Did they help? She said only 2 of the names haven't been hit yet, so the list was very helpful. Sarah handed him back the papers. Any idea which 2? Todd scanned the paper, wishing the names would just jump out at him. Sarah shook her head. Nope, she just said to lay low. And you didn't tell her I told Patrick and Rachel. Why? Todd set the pencil down and stretched. She shrugged. I figured she didn't need to know. Someone knocked at the door, and Sarah went to answer it. Todd quickly scooped up all the papers and set them in a desk drawer. Rachel stood at the door. Hey, a few of the guys are going into town for supplies. I thought you might want a quick tour. Todd wanted to kiss her. It was time to get out of this place for a bit. We'd love to. We just need to change, and then we'll be right down. Sarah turned and looked up at him after the door was closed. Are we sure we should be going out there right now? Todd pulled up the map on his phone and zoomed out. The nearest town I can find is tiny. I'd be surprised if anyone follows us there. Sarah bit her lip, but finally nodded. You're right. Todd changed into his jeans and flannel while Sarah changed in the bathroom. When she came out, she was completely decked out from her cowboy hat down to her boots. She slipped on her coat. Let's go before someone changes their mind. I need some fresh air. Sarah had the door open and was halfway down the hall before Todd could catch up. Rachel, Patrick, and a few of the ranch hands stood out by their trucks when Sarah and Todd finally got out there. The wind was icy cold, and there was still snow on the ground, but it didn't seem to matter to anyone else. Okay, let's have Sarah and Todd go with us. We'll meet the rest of you at Justin's house. Rachel climbed into her truck, and Patrick climbed in on the other side. Todd opened the door and helped Sarah in before climbing in next to her. It was a little squished, but that just meant that Sarah had to sit close to him. He wrapped his arms around her, and she leaned on him so they could shift enough for their legs to fit. Prepare to have your minds blown by the cutest little town you'll ever see. Rachel pulled out of the driveway and took a left. Patrick turned to face them. It's definitely got personality. Kept you around, didn't it? Rachel swatted his knee. I'm pretty sure it was something else that kept me here. Patrick laughed. The roads were icy, and Todd kept bracing himself every time they came to a turn, but it was obvious Rachel had taken these roads many times before. As they got closer to the small town, Todd straightened so he could see everything. Small stores lined the streets, and there was a diner near the center. A clothing store stood out, obviously much newer than the buildings around it. They went past the buildings and continued to a small house where they pulled in. Rachel parked and the other truck pulled in next to them. We're not staying here long. Laura just wanted to go to lunch with us, so Justin needed to pick her up. They waited a few minutes before a woman came out with a car seat and got into the other truck. Once she was settled, they headed back to the diner. Todd stretched when he finally got out of the car. His legs had cramped sitting sideways for so long, but he wasn't going to complain. This was the first he'd left the ranch since he got there. Christmas decorations covered the diner, and there was a distinct smell of cinnamon and peppermint in the air. There was a spot for them at a booth near the back, so Rachel and Patrick headed straight to it. Todd glanced through the menu, trying to figure out what he wanted to eat. By the time the waitress got there to order, Todd had decided on the burger and fries, and Sarah chose the same thing. While the others chatted about what they were going to be doing for Christmas and New Year's Eve, Todd checked out the small town that would supposedly be his new home. People walked up and down the sidewalks, waving and talking to others before continuing on. Families were having snowball fights in the park, but one thing seemed to be missing. Are there no stoplights? Rachel grinned and shook her head. We just got our first four-way stop a few years back, and people are still getting used to it. That's so cool. Todd had to admit that if he could choose the perfect life, it would be in a small town just like this, away from all the craziness he lived with. Soon after their food was served, Sarah's phone rang. Her eyebrows raised when she looked at the caller ID and shot Todd a worried look. Excuse me, I have to take this. Sarah left the diner and talked outside, pacing in the snow. Todd picked at his burger, wondering who it was that she was talking to. Whoever it was, it couldn't be good. Carly was the only one who should have the number, and they'd talked not very long ago. She wouldn't chance it by calling again, right? Sarah burst into the diner and strode back to the group, tears running down her cheeks. I need to go, Todd. Rachel gasped. Patrick jerked up to look at Sarah, and Todd's stomach dropped. The others looked between them in confusion. What are you talking about? The food just got here. Todd tried to brush over everything, but it was clear that wasn't working. No, we need to go, now. She looked over at Rachel. Could I borrow your truck? I'll take it straight to your house. Rachel pulled the keys out of her pocket. The fourth gear sticks a little. Todd threw some money on the table and wrapped both burgers in a napkin, then scooted out of the booth. He waited until after they left the diner before saying anything. London. Hey, Sarah. He whispered the last word. Don't talk me out of it. She yanked the door open and turned to face Todd. They have Anne. Todd gently pulled her to the side. You're in no shape to drive. I'll do it. She nodded and ran around the truck. Todd started the truck and pulled out. It took a bit to get used to the gears, but they managed to get going. Now, explain. Todd grimaced as he switched to fourth gear. That was my mom. She let out a sob. They came in during the night and got her. The note they left said that if we didn't stay off the case, they'd come after the rest of my family. Todd swore and took Sarah's hand. How do they know we were working on it? Sarah shook her head. My mom doesn't know. Todd, we need to get this figured out. I can't just stay here and pretend like everything is okay. I agree. Call Carly and... No, if I call, she's going to make sure I stay here. I can't do that. Sarah squeezed Todd's hand, her nails biting into his skin. Todd turned the corner and had to steer into the skid so they wouldn't fly off the road. Speaking of which, you don't happen to know where to go from here, do you? Turn left up there. I see the ranch up ahead. Sarah wiped her eyes. If anything happens, I'll never forgive myself. We're not going to let them do anything. We'll find them. Carly narrowed my list down to 2 people. That means we just need to figure out who they are and go. They parked at the ranch and ran inside. They shoved things into their bags while Todd called a taxi and Sarah explained what was going on. Angela made food for the trip and handed Sarah a basket. You come back when things have calmed down, maybe in the spring or summer when the ranch is awake and running. Todd hugged Angela and kissed her on the cheek. It's a deal. Thanks for everything. She waved as they climbed inside the taxi. The thought crossed Todd's mind that this guy could be a spy, but he doubted it. They were concentrating on making Sarah's life miserable by going after her parents. That meant they had no clue where Todd was, and he hoped it would stay that way until he could close in. Instead of going to Burley like the last time, Todd directed the driver to the Twin Falls Airport. He booked 2 plane tickets to Salt Lake. Hopefully, by the time they got there, he'd figure out the next place to go. Todd grabbed several newspapers from the Salt Lake Airport's stands and went to find Sarah at the gate. They'd be flying to New Jersey in an hour, so it gave him time to make plans. He sat next to Sarah and opened the papers, searching for any leads. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder. Anything? Nope, except for the definite lack of any of those ads. Something stopped them, which I guess is a good thing. Definitely. That means Braden's dad must have gotten a hold of someone at Silverscript. So long as he's okay, the agency should be in the clear. Sarah pointed at a small ad in the classifieds. That's the 3rd one I've seen with that same name and number. Todd flipped back through. You're right, but the messages are different every time. Do you have a pencil? Sarah went through her bag and found a pen. She wrote down each of the messages along with the number, while Todd looked through another one of the papers. There were a few more in this one with the same messages. It could have been nothing, but that's not what his gut told him. Anything? Nope. The phone numbers seem to be nothing, and the address isn't working either. Todd took the notebook and stared at the words. Rearranging them would take a while, but if the number didn't work, something else would. He moved things around and then leaned back. They're here. What do you mean they're here? Sarah leaned forward, her cheek resting against his arm. I guess that explains why the letters were in Utah newspapers. What do you want to do? Todd stared down at the paper. They were so close. He could go there and stop them tonight. But if it went wrong... Let's stick with our plan for now. We'll tell Carly what's going on, but continue to New Jersey and on to New York City. I want to talk to Silverscript myself. See if they can describe the person they worked with for the ads. They probably just talked over the phone. No, they wouldn't do it that way. They want to pay in cash. I'm guessing most of the agencies wouldn't allow them to do it that way, so they had to find someone who would. But what I don't get is why they're spending so much money on advertising when they're not going to make that much on the merchandise. Sarah nodded. I wondered the same thing. The only reasons I can think of is that maybe they have something huge they're going to unload that will pay it off, or they're using the ads as a front to launder money. Todd blinked. She was right. He pulled the notes he'd made the night before out of his bag and scanned through them. I can't believe I didn't see it. What? Come on, we need to see if they'll transfer our tickets. Todd grabbed his bag and jogged to the desk. He smiled at the woman and held out his tickets. Hey, I need to cancel or transfer these tickets to a different day. The woman raised her eyebrows. But we're about to board. I know, but we just found out her sister's been kidnapped, and we need to go help find her. Please. Todd wrapped an arm around Sarah. Her sister means the world to her. The woman typed something into the computer. The next flight doesn't leave until tomorrow. I can put you on that flight instead. Todd tapped the counter. Let's make it the day after. You know, just in case it takes longer to find her. Sarah burst into tears. Todd wasn't sure if it was real or not, but it helped with his case, so he pulled her closer and smoothed her hair. The attendant typed more into the computer and printed out new tickets. "Here you go. Good luck finding her." The woman shot Sarah a sympathetic glance and went back to her computer. As they left the gate, there was an announcement that 2 seats were available for those on standby. Todd squeezed Sarah's shoulder. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have used that as an excuse." Sarah shook her head. "It's okay. It's the truth. Come on. The sooner we stop them, the sooner we can get Anne back." Todd rented a car under his assumed name, and soon they were on the way to the drop-off point. "One huge thing I missed through all of my research is that the 2 last people who haven't been robbed have one mutual friend in common. Someone who isn't part of the ring, but has dealt with us plenty of times in the past." "Who?" Todd pursed his lips as he got onto the freeway. "Hunter's dad." Chapter 7. Sarah leaned back on the soft couch and closed her eyes. It had been a very long few days, and if they didn't find who was responsible for all of this mess soon, she'd go crazy. Todd sat at a desk in their rented apartment and went over the notes again. The meeting would be soon, and he wanted to make sure he had everything right. They'd spent the last 2 days shopping and making sure they knew where they'd be going and how long it took to get there from their apartment. Sarah hoped that she would hear more about where her sister was, but so far nothing had turned up. The long red satin dress she'd bought for that night hung on the doorway. Sarah sat back up and pulled her new computer onto her lap. She went through all of the assessments that Carly had sent her, separating comments into helpful, not helpful, and random, then sent it back. Now that she'd gotten her work out of the way, Sarah decided to do her own research. There had to be some information out there on Hunter's dad. He'd gone for the same scepter that Dee and Danny had, but he'd ended up in jail. And while he was there, his stash of priceless heirlooms was alone in his house. Sarah used the coding she learned from Ben and Brayden to hack into the security cameras at his house. Most were dark since no one was occupying the house, but 2 were still on. Sarah zoomed in and their fears were confirmed. The display cases were empty. At least the ones closest to the camera. "Hey Todd, come and look at this." Sarah typed a few more keys and found the other camera that was still on. This one was pointed more toward the hallway in the area, and the walls were bare. Todd whistled from behind Sarah and picked up Sarah's phone. "I'd call Carly. Hunter should know what's going on." "I'm not too sure he's going to care. I assume he's moved on with his life." Sarah took the phone from him. "I do think we're going to want to head there, though. Is that where the meeting is?" "Nope." Todd pulled out his own phone. "I don't think that's their endgame." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean?" Todd went to the desk and came back with papers. "Look at the numbers on the notepad." "The ones from the classifieds?" "Yes. Now, look at these." Todd pulled up a page on his phone and handed it to her. "They all match. The addresses and the prices on the ads are the same. They've been hiding the money laundering right in front of the whole country, and only those with the right codes could figure it out." Sarah scrolled through the pictures, comparing them to the ads. He was right. Wouldn't the FBI or CIA or whoever figure this out? It's a pretty bold move. Todd leaned down and kissed the top of Sarah's head. "You only think it was easy because you figured out that the classified ads matched. Between everything you've gleaned from Carly and her crew over the years and my criminal background, we put together what it will take years for the FBI to figure out." "Well, shouldn't we tell them? I mean, the more people to back us up, the better, right?" Sarah rubbed her forehead. All this code breaking was giving her a headache. "We will, just not yet. There are a few more loose ends I want to tie up first." Todd nodded toward Sarah's dress. "It's time to get ready. We have some crime fighting to do." Sarah stood and pulled the hanger off the door. She went into her room to change and dropped onto the bed to make a call. "Hey, Carly. Having a fun vacation?" "Actually, yes. But I assume you don't want to know how skiing went today. What's up?" Sarah ran through everything Todd had told her and added what she'd seen at Hunter's dad's house. There was silence on the other end for a moment. "You just had to ruin my perfect snow day, didn't you?" Carly chuckled. "Don't move. Don't go anywhere. We'll be there as soon as we can." "It's too late. You won't make it in time." Sarah glanced over at the dress. "I'll be careful." Carly grumbled. "You're more stubborn than I am. No wonder you're my assistant. But still, I can't have you going to that event tonight." Sarah pursed her lips, fighting several words that would get her fired. When she'd calmed down, she finally spoke. "You have a baby and a husband. I'm not letting you put yourself in danger. I got us into this mess. I'm going to help get us out. When we find out more, I'll let you know." She hung up and tossed the phone onto the bed and hopped in the shower. The hot water and steam-filled room helped calm her nerves, and by the time she slipped into the dress, she was calm. The necklace from her grandma still hung around her neck, and as much as she hated to, she took it off and set it inside her makeup bag. She couldn't bear to have it stolen if things went wrong that night. Instead of the simple locket, she added a large diamond necklace and earrings, and then finished her makeup with the dark red lipstick. Her heels were a little taller than what she normally wore, but they were perfect for the dress. Todd stood out in the living room, buttoning the sleeves on his dress shirt. Everything fit him just perfectly, and Sarah had to stop to take a breath. He grinned when he saw her, which only added to his attractiveness. "You never cease to amaze me. I always wonder how you could possibly be more beautiful, and then you come out of the room looking like that." He picked up his jacket and put it on. Sarah stepped forward to help button the jacket and smoothed it across his shoulders. "You look like you're feeling a little better." He nodded. "The wound is hurting a lot less, and I have more range of motion, which is good because I'm going to need it tonight." Sarah straightened his bow tie. "You think it's going to end like that?" "I turned on my family. Yes, I think it will. And when it goes out of control, I want you to get out. Got it? You need to go find your family." "I'm not leaving you." Sarah pulled a small handgun out of her purse. "We're going to get out of this mess, and then we're going to get my sister back." Todd leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Yes, we will. Come on." They left the apartment and climbed into the limo Todd had rented to take them to the show. Sarah held tightly to her purse as they drove, going over the plan in her mind. Find his grandparents' jewels, plant a little distrust here and there among the people inside, and get out. Simple, as long as she could do her job. Staying in the background was what she preferred, so why did she push herself to the front this time? But she knew the answer. Family. They'd gone after the wrong person, and they would regret touching any member of her family. "You're quiet." Todd nudged her with his shoulder. "It's going to be fine." "I know. I'm just going over everything that has to happen." Sarah smiled to reassure him, but she was pretty sure he didn't buy it any more than she did. Todd put an arm around her and kissed her forehead. "I'm so sorry for getting you into this mess." "If you hadn't, you'd be up against all of this yourself." Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder. "When all of this is done, I'm going to need a real vacation." Todd chuckled. "Me too." The limo pulled up to the Christmas party, where the celebrities got to party before the New Year's Eve festivities the next week. Why the crime lords had to take something fun and use it for their own entertainment was beyond Sarah, but here they were. Todd held onto Sarah's arm. "And you're sure you can handle this? If they catch my scent at all, we're both dead." "I got it." Sarah climbed out amongst the flashing lights of the media. As far as they knew, she was an up-and-coming movie star, and Todd was her co-star. She smiled and waved at the cameras, pushing away her fear. She could panic later. Right now, she had a job to do. The red carpet seemed to be a mile long, but after blowing kisses and pausing for photos, she finally made it into the building. Flashing lights and pounding bass met her as she moved into the ballroom. Bodies mashed together as they danced. Here, the celebrities could let their hair down and be themselves. Todd moved away from her as she danced her way through the crowd. It was all an act. She could do this, just another part in a play. 2 guards sat against the back wall, pretending not to be guarding the door between them. Sarah spoke the words Todd had pulled from the newspaper, and one of them stood to let her in, leering at her as she walked past. She'd have to watch out for him when she left. The mood changed instantly as soon as the door shut. Displays similar to the ones she'd seen in photos from Hunter stood in the center of the room. Men and women mingled about, studying the various items inside. Sarah strode over to the displays, examining each piece of jewelry. Some of it was gaudy, something she wouldn't be caught wearing, but the emeralds and sapphires were another story. Statues and crowns from all over the world were priced in the thousands or millions, and a few of them had already been sold. Unease plagued her as she made it around to the last display. The jewels she was here to find weren't here. Either there were more events like this one, or it was a trap. Sarah moved around the display another time to make sure she hadn't missed anything. She wrote her name down on a few of the pieces for the auction so that people wouldn't suspect her, then took a glass of champagne from one of the waiters. When the others were lost in conversation, she set the glass on a nearby table and slipped out. The guards had changed, but Sarah spotted them not too far away, still keeping an eye on the door. She pushed her way through the dance floor to get as much distance between her and the guard as she could. Todd stood near the dessert table with a plate in his hand. Sarah sauntered up to him and took his hand. He stood and pulled her in for a hug, his lips moving close to her ear. "Any luck?" Sarah shook her head. "They weren't here." "You're sure?" She nodded and pulled him toward the dance floor. There was another hour before they could leave without raising suspicion. Now it was time to mingle. Sarah dropped to the couch, not caring if her dress got wrinkled. "That was the most exhausting thing I've ever done." "What, you don't go to parties?" Todd loosened his tie and sat next to her. "So what did you see in there?" "Jewels, statues, crowns. Typical for what you'd find at an event like this. I was just notified that I won King Tut's breastplate, so that'll make a nice addition to Carly's collection at the museum." Todd frowned. "How are you going to pay for it?" "Carly wired me the money as soon as I told her what I got." Sarah kicked off her heels and propped them up on the ottoman. "Don't get too comfortable. Hunter found another show in Arizona that he and Danny are going to, and Braden and Carly are headed to one in St. Louis." Sarah frowned. "They contacted you?" "No, they contacted you." He tossed her phone on the couch. "The text just came in." She read through everything Carly had said and then stood. "Guess we're going to Jersey." "Guess so." Todd went to his room to change, and Sarah did the same. Sarah debated what to take with her, and finally decided just to take all of it. The manager who owned this place probably wouldn't appreciate having a bunch of clothes left in the apartment. Besides, she'd grown kind of fond of a few of the outfits. She switched out the jewels for her necklace and zipped up her bag. It was time to move again. Todd sat in the living room when she left her room, looking at something on his phone. He stood and picked up his bag. "Our flight leaves in 2 hours. We'll barely make it in time if we leave right now." "Sounds good to me." Sarah took his hand and they left the apartment, making sure to leave the key on the table. The drive back to the airport was fairly quick with it being so late, and they pulled into the rental return sooner than they'd expected. After making it through the short security line, Todd grabbed some snacks from the small grocery store in the airport. They hadn't eaten for a while, and it wasn't likely they'd get food on the plane. It looked like only a few people would be on the flight. Sarah kept watching for anyone she might recognize from the party, but most of them were businessmen typing on their laptops. She curled up on one of the seats and tried to get a quick nap before the flight. The sounds of those around her kept her mind moving. She ran over everything that had happened at the party that night, hoping for some clue as to where her sister or the people in charge could be. But everyone had only been talking about the jewels and other artifacts in front of them. By the time they were asked to board, Sarah hadn't gotten any sleep. She dragged herself onto the plane and collapsed in her seat. It was a good 4-hour flight, and she planned to sleep the entire time, as long as she could get her mind to be quiet. Todd leaned back in his chair next to her and took her hand. "You did good." "I sure hope so." Sarah shifted so she could lay her head on his shoulder. "I didn't talk to anyone, but there wasn't much talking anyway. But I keep worrying that I did something wrong, wrote something wrong on the paperwork, or bid on too many things or something." Todd shook his head. "You're fine. I think if you went back through, there would be people who bid for every item, and a few who only bid on one thing. Sarah finally nodded. You're right. I'm just so antsy. I want to figure out where my sister is before something happens. You signed your name with the new alias, right? Yep, I made sure. Melody is different enough from London that it was easy to remember. Todd leaned his head back in the seat. Then we should be good. Now relax and watch a movie or something. Sarah nodded and did her best to clear her mind. Once they hit New Jersey, things would get crazy and she needed to be ready for it. The plane touched down, jostling Sarah out of her sleep. She sat up and stretched. They were there already? Todd groaned and sat up, blinking at the lights that had gone on in the cabin. I could have used another few hours. Or days. He yawned and unbuckled his seatbelt. Ed's dad is supposed to be meeting us at the entrance, so we need to move quickly. Sarah stood and grabbed her bag. Do we know when the next event will be? No, not yet, but that means we have some time to go find out what happened with Silverscript. Todd smiled at one of the passengers who was staring at them and dropped his voice. Stay alert. They could be anywhere. Sarah nodded and stayed quiet. She didn't like the way the other passenger kept looking over her shoulder at her and Todd. They'd definitely have to watch their back on the way out. It was finally their turn to leave the plane. Todd went first, holding tightly to Sarah's hand. They had no weapons and no way to defend themselves except for the bags. They could always swing those if needed. This airport was a little more crowded, and the woman was lost among the tired travelers. Sarah kept watch as they strode toward the entrance. It was a good thing they didn't have to wait to pick up their bags. The faster they could move, the less likely they'd get ambushed by whoever was doing this. A man stood in the entryway, holding the sign for Melody and Peter Graff. Sarah waved to let him know where they were and strode over to him. I'm Melody, and this is Peter. She handed him her bag before he had a chance to argue, and they walked out to his car. I'm Sam. It's nice to meet you. Sam smiled and turned toward the door. Sarah doubted that was his real name, but went with it anyway. After all, his son's handler name was Ed, but she also knew him as Ben. They just used Ed in front of Todd, and would until they were sure he was trusted. Sarah couldn't help the pang of guilt for not trusting him, but it would be up to Ben to decide when to tell him. Once they were out of the airport, they headed into the parking garage and to his car. It was an old, beat-up Nissan, very likely on its last leg, but it would do. They set their things inside the trunk and then squished inside. Sarah's stomach felt like butterflies were going to break through at any moment. She took the back seat and let Todd sit in front. She was too nervous to say anything, and they needed to figure out where they were supposed to be. Good flight? Sam asked. We both slept the whole way, so it was perfect, Todd said. How close are we to where we're going? About a half hour. Sam turned onto a main road. Ed tells me you've had quite an experience. How was ranching? Sam took them into the city, and Sarah stared wide-eyed at the skyscrapers in front of her. She'd always wanted to go to New York City, and here she was, just not how she'd planned. None of this was what she'd planned. First time in New York, Sarah? Sam asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. It's quite the city. I've always wanted to come here. I'd had high hopes for a scholarship to one of the universities, but I couldn't pass up the chance to go to Arizona on a full ride. Sarah's heart leapt as they made it into the heart of Manhattan. She was here. Well, you'll be staying right on Times Square, so you can take in a lot of the sights while you're here. After the job is done, of course. Sam turned into a parking garage. Take a left and then a right, and you're in Manhattan Towers. It's not the prettiest place, but it's secure. I'll contact you when I have more information. You have a meeting with Silverscript in the morning at 9 o'clock. Sarah beamed at Sam. Thank you for everything. Sam handed a set of keys to Todd and waved. Once upon a time, I thought I'd left this life. But the moment Ed showed up with Dee, I knew that wouldn't be the case. Good luck. Todd and Sarah climbed out of the car and took their bags from the trunk. Sam took off out of the garage and headed in the opposite direction from where they'd come. Welcome to New York City, Todd chuckled. Guess we take the long way to the apartment. Not that I blame him. Ed told me he had to move because his old enemies came to find him. Sarah searched for the exit to the garage and headed that way. He never said which way we were supposed to leave before taking the left. Todd checked his map and pointed north. We go that way first. I guess I could have checked that. Sarah pulled her coat closer. This would have been a lot easier in the spring or summer. It's a little chilly to be walking through the streets at the end of December. Yes, but it's beautiful. Todd took her hand in his as they walked down the street. It's amazing how busy it is this late at night. Sarah nodded. A whole different world from where we were just a few days ago, isn't it? I have to say, I kind of miss the quiet. Todd pushed the button to the crosswalk. Do you know Sam at all? She shook her head. Only that he's Ed's father, and then a few tidbits here and there. He'd kept the fact that he's a spy from his son until just a couple of years ago. Todd sighed. I wish my parents had done the same. I'll have that life trailing me for the rest of my life. Sarah squeezed his hand. Not if you take those skills and knowledge and do something good with them. Besides, that's what we're trying to fix right now, right? I guess. They crossed the street and went one more block before taking a right. The apartment complex stood tall, and Sarah felt dizzy just looking up to see the top. They crossed the street and used the keys from Sam to go inside. The entry was dimly lit, but the checkered floor was polished, and the paintings on the walls showed whoever owned the building took pride in the building. They took the elevator to the 9th floor. It opened up to another dimly lit hall. The apartment itself was only a one-bedroom, but it was cozy and furnished with modern furniture. Todd set his bag near the couch. I'll take the living room, and you can have the bedroom. Todd stretched and dropped onto the couch. 9 comes very soon, so I'm going straight to sleep. Sounds good to me. Sarah yawned and closed the door to her small room. Their room in the ranch house was almost bigger than the entire apartment here, but she didn't care. She was in New York City. She pulled back the curtain, and while there wasn't much to see besides other buildings, Sarah couldn't help grinning. She was here. Chapter 8. Todd straightened his tie, glancing at the time on the microwave. They'd need to leave soon to make it to Silverscript, and he still hadn't seen Sarah. He knocked at her door, and she opened it, smiling. She was dressed in a red dress that hugged her curves, and her hair was curly, something he hadn't seen before. You look beautiful this morning. He kissed her and then helped her with her coat. How'd you sleep? Having the city noises outside my window was a little jarring after the quiet we've had, but I drifted off pretty fast. You? Like a log. Todd grabbed the keys off the table. We'll need a briefcase, but that should be easy enough to find between here and the agency. Sarah zipped up her coat. Let's do this. If anything, it was colder outside than it had been when they arrived the night before. The streets were packed as they walked to the subway. Todd was tempted to use a cab instead, but by the look of traffic, the subway would be faster. They found the entrance to the subway and followed the crowd downstairs. The next train would leave in a few minutes, so Todd quickly got the passes for both of them, and they waited, huddled together. First time on a subway? He whispered, brushing a few stray hairs away from her eyes. I've been on trains, but yes, this is a first. Todd pulled her closer to protect her from the icy wind that blew through the tunnel. It was a relief when the train finally got there and they could squish in with everyone else. Sarah had to press up against him to make room for others. Todd smiled to himself. Maybe he liked the subways a little more than he'd thought. What? She smiled up at him. Nothing, just enjoying being here with you. He kissed her forehead, then had to brace himself when the train came to a stop. Several people climbed off, and more climbed on. When 2 seats finally opened up, they sat down. Todd leaned close to Sarah. Do we know what we want to say? We probably should have gone over that last night. She shrugged. Nope, but we have the facts. We'll just have to go over them and see what they have to say. Hopefully they'll have some answers for us. If not, you got a nice vacation out of it, right? Sarah sighed. Yes, I did. But it wouldn't bring me any closer to finding my sister. No, it wouldn't. Todd stared out the window. We'll find her. We won't stop until we do. She shook her head. No, we won't. When they finally got to their stop, Todd took her hand so he wouldn't lose her in the crowd. They would have to walk a couple of blocks, but they needed to find a shop for a briefcase anyway. Most of the shops were closed, but they found a small one with backpacks. It wasn't ideal, but it was easier and more secure than holding all of the papers in his arms. The building of Silverscript was impressive. Glass windows, white tile, modern decor inside. Todd went to the front desk. Hi, we have an appointment with Silverscript, Melody and Peter Graff. Take the elevators to the 7th floor. Ask for Deborah. The woman handed them visitor badges. Thanks. Todd took one of them and handed the other to Sarah. The elevator played Christmas music softly in the background as they rode to the 7th floor. Any ideas on what we'll say? Because we're even closer than we were on the subway, and I still have no clue what we're doing here. Sarah's face was a little green. Hey, it's okay. Just pretend like you're in front of one of your classes. Cool, calm, collected. You'll be fine. Sarah tipped her head. How'd you know I teach classes? Todd hesitated, his face burning. You forget I was a little obsessed. Danny. I might have sat in on a class or two hoping to catch Carly after one of them. You do a great job. So, you knew who I was before we met in Jackson Hole? He shook his head. Not really. I mean, I knew you as an intern, filling in for Carly. I didn't connect the two until we met at the restaurant. This was not the conversation they needed to be having right now. It was a relief when the doors finally opened and he could have a chance to breathe. He really hadn't known her more than that. He just wished it hadn't been brought up. By him. A woman stood nearby and looked up when they approached. She smiled and held a hand out. I assume you're Melody and Peter? I'm Deborah. Thank you for meeting with us on such short notice. Todd moved to take Sarah's hand, but she walked ahead of him. He sighed. There would be words later. Or silence. Either way, he wasn't looking forward to it. Bringing up his past was never a good idea, especially where Danny was concerned. Deborah's corner office was large, with windows from floor to ceiling. She sat at her desk and gestured for them to take a seat. Now, what can I do for you? Sarah stared down at her hands, so Todd jumped in. I wanted to talk about one of your clients. I know with privacy laws and all that, your hands are tied, but it's important that we do. He pulled out the files from his bag and sifted through them. When he found the page with the logo, he handed it to her. Deborah's smile dropped. We let this customer go. We have nothing more to say about them. I think there's more, though. If we could... Who are you with again? Do I need to fire my receptionist for letting you up here? Sarah pulled out papers from Carly's exhibits. We're with her. We help find stolen items and make sure that they are put in a safe place. Ah, I went to one of the openings at the museum. Impressive. But how does that relate to these advertisements? Deborah leaned back in her chair. Todd handed her the stack of papers. They were running a few different money laundering schemes using those ads, along with trying to sell stolen goods. I need to know who was in charge of that account. Melody's sister's life is at stake. They have her sister? Yes, they took her from protective custody 2 days ago. Sarah leaned forward. See these numbers? They're prices that you have listed in the ads, but they're also repeated in the classifieds. They corresponded with meeting times for when they'd be selling off the stolen goods. Do you have any of the ads that you haven't run yet? That could also help us tremendously. Deborah tapped a few keys on her computer and scanned a few documents. It looks like there were 2 more that we never ran. When we found out the company wasn't legit, we immediately pulled the campaign. Who told you it wasn't legit? Todd took a picture of the ads on the computer so he could decipher them later. He just hoped they wouldn't have to fly somewhere else for the last 2 meetings. She smirked. Anyone who did a little more research into the company would have caught it. I was out of town, so we had an associate approving the ads. He is no longer employed here. What about the person who actually created them? He was new, so he was put on probation until we could check to make sure he wasn't part of it. After this new information, however, I fear we're going to have to let him go." Deborah handed the pile of papers back and picked up the phone. "If you're willing to wait for a bit, I'll have him come in so you can talk." Todd nodded. "That would be wonderful. If you could go to the conference room, I'll make the call. And please let me know if there's anything we can get you while you wait." Sarah stood. "Thank you. If you could get us copies of the last 2 ads and the newspaper from the last couple of days, that would be the most helpful." Deborah nodded. "Of course." "Thank you." Todd shook her hand and left the office. "The conference room is just 2 doors down." Deborah gestured toward them. "I'll be with you shortly." Todd found a seat at one end of the conference room, and Sarah sat across from him, staring at her phone. "Are you going to stay mad at me for something that happened months ago? Years ago?" Todd pulled up the pictures he'd just taken so he could write down the numbers. "Why didn't you tell me from the beginning that you knew who I was?" Sarah glared. "You want us to trust you, but you don't tell us everything." Todd sighed. "I didn't think it was a big deal. Besides, do you like having all your dirty laundry from your past hanging out there for everyone to see?" Sarah clenched her fists. "I don't have dirty laundry." "Right. So you've never done anything wrong? Never toilet papered someone's house? Never partied a little too much at school?" That doesn't matter." Todd raised an eyebrow. "So I have to share everything, but you don't? That sounds fair." Sarah growled. "You're so frustrating." "And you're not? I've been honest with you the whole time. I didn't hide my past with you like I've done so many times before. I told you about my family, something most people don't know. If anyone should be upset right now, it's me." The door opened and a blonde woman stepped inside. "Hey, I'm Erin. I have the newspapers and ads you asked for. Sorry they're not in color. The printer is broken, and with it being a couple of days before Christmas, no one wants to come and fix it. Black and white is fine." Todd took the papers from her. "Any idea when the other guy will get here?" Erin frowned. "He's not answering his phone. We've sent someone to his house, but after everything you told Deborah, I'm wondering if he skipped town." Deborah said he was new. Any idea how long he's worked here? Todd opened the papers and handed Sarah some of the classified section. He'd take the rest. "A few months. I didn't work directly with him. He was quiet, didn't really interact with anyone, but he was a hard worker. He pumped those ads out faster than most get one done." Erin paused. "I guess that should have told us something." Todd circled one of the listings. "How would you have known?" "That we were advertising for a fake company? All of us should have known." Sarah finally looked up from her paper. "Don't feel bad. They took a lot of time to make everything look legit. I'm thinking this has been months in the making." "Still, you'd hope it would have raised red flags." Erin leaned against the doorway. "Anything else I can get you? Coffee? Water?" "One more thing. When they paid, did they pay in cash?" Todd asked. Erin shrugged. "We don't take cash usually, so I doubt it. I can find out, though." "Great. And if you find out anything else about this company, please let us know." "Of course. I'll go ask around and be back." Erin left the room and Todd went back to the ads. "Anything?" He circled another ad that was similar to the first and continued scanning. Sarah shook her head. "What if they're not here?" "They're here. If the guy skipped town, they're here." Todd went through another page of ads before setting it aside. He laid his head in his arms to think. They wouldn't use the same code method for every city. That would just be sloppy. Go through the rest of the paper. Look for anything out of the ordinary. Like? I don't know, but it's in here. Christmas shoppers are packed in, trying to get the last-minute deals. Using the huge celebration in Times Square as a distraction would be just like them. Sarah looked up at him. "You think my sister could be this close?" "Yes, and we're going to find her." Todd set the newspaper aside and pulled out the ads that hadn't been printed yet. They were different than the others. Prices weren't listed like before. It was a percentage off. The fine print was bigger this time, which was odd. "It's here." Todd handed one of the sheets to Sarah. "It's in the fine print. Something's there. Look through the way they worded things. Everything." Sarah slid the paper closer and scanned it. Most of this doesn't even make sense. Not that fine print does very often, but some of it is word for word what other ads say. But then there's a bunch of words that don't belong. What do you mean? Todd read through it. Words were out of order or spelled wrong in some places, while extra words were missing in others. How did this get past the approval stage again? They didn't. Deborah stood at the doorway with 2 mugs. That's what actually made us pull them. We thought it was a misprint, but it's in both. Thank you. Todd took the offered mug and set it on the table. So that's what tipped you off? No one contacted you? Deborah shook her head. I got back from vacation and went through my files. When I saw the typos, I immediately pulled it. It wasn't until after that when we got an email with warnings that the company wasn't legit. And this is why I don't take vacations. Todd laughed with her. Has this ever happened before? No. We've had issues with employees, but that was more work ethic or not staying out of trouble. But this... She sighed. I worry that we'll lose clients after something like this gets out. If it does, it won't be from us. Got it. Sarah slapped her pen down on the table. It's definitely a code, but it doesn't make sense. Deborah pulled up a chair and slid the paper over so she could see it better. Word puzzles, my favorite. Todd wrote out all the words so he could start unscrambling. The worry is, if this was never put out, how will anyone know where and when this is going to happen? It could be that they changed locations, or a time, and we'll never know. Aaron opened the conference room door. We found him. He's coming up now. Great. Maybe he'll have some answers. Deborah stood. Maybe they found a new location, but chances are this got out to enough people that they'll keep it going. We can only hope for her sister's sake. Erin cleared her throat. That's not all. It appears that no money ever came in for the advertisements. Bills were sent, but we haven't seen anything yet. Deborah frowned. This just keeps getting better and better, doesn't it? A group of people came down the hall, holding the arms of a shorter guy in the middle. Todd's jaw dropped when he finally caught sight of the man's face. Jimmy? Chapter 9. Sarah glanced between the group out in the hall and Todd. You know him? Todd swallowed hard. He's my brother. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to calm down. She'd already made a fool of herself by getting mad, and she didn't want to do it again. You have a brother? Half-brother. We barely know each other. This is why. Jimmy was brought in, and they sat him down at the table a little harder than they needed to before stepping back. Deborah nodded, and they left, Jimmy staring after them like he wanted to follow. Sarah shut the door and sat, lacing her fingers together so she wouldn't be tempted to punch someone. Toddy boy, didn't think I'd be seeing you around. Gone all straight and narrow, Jimmy snickered. Not straight enough if you were able to follow my little breadcrumbs. Deborah narrowed her eyes. Todd? Sarah cleared her throat. It's been a long few days. We didn't know who to trust and had to go with aliases. We apologize. Fair enough. Deborah slid the ads toward Jimmy. These are yours, correct? Yeah, so? Jimmy leaned back in his chair. That's what we do here, right? Make the ads, sell the goods. Erin rolled her eyes. Cut the crap, Jimmy. Which, by the way, fits you so much better than Malcolm. Todd snorted. Malcolm? You went with Grandpa's name? How stupid could you? Not important. Sarah glared at Todd. Jimmy, right now there's a huge meeting set for tonight, and we plan to be there. The location you coded into the fine print here, is it still the right place? I have no idea what you're talking about. Jimmy leaned forward. I don't need to say anything else without my lawyer present. Todd shook his head. Not going to happen. There are no police, so there are no Miranda rights. Spill, where's the meeting? Jimmy smiled. Why? You want to see our dear old mom and dad? Fine, but I wouldn't advise that you attend. They're a little angry with you. It was like Sarah had stepped into a mafia movie or something. Anne was stuck with someone like Jimmy? She shuddered. Is this correct? Todd tapped the ad. Last I heard, but after I got put on probation, they were a little less willing to share information with me. Can I go now? It's the holidays and all that. Jimmy stared at Todd. Deborah leaned over and whispered something in Aaron's ear. Aaron nodded and left the room, pulling out her phone. Deborah turned to Jimmy. I believe these two are done with you, but I'm not. We have to talk about the subject of payment for those advertisements. Todd, Melody, or whatever your name is, thank you for coming. I trust that the information you have is enough? For now. Sarah held out a hand. I'm Sarah. It's very nice to meet you. Thanks so much for everything. She opened the door to leave. Jimmy leaned forward. Oh, and Sarah, is it? Your sister is quite beautiful. Has a lot of fire in her. Kind of like the spark I see in your eyes. I do hope she starts listening. I'd hate to see something happen to her. Jimmy smirked, and it took Todd wrapping his arms around her and walking her out the door to keep her from attacking Jimmy. He's not worth it. Todd shoved all the papers in his bag on their way to the elevator. I know where they're going to be, and I know when. You do? Sarah pushed away the desire to charge back into the room. How? Where? It's an old fish market. The mafia loves to go there whenever they can. It's going to go down tomorrow night. My guess is they're going to come up with some kind of distraction so that everyone will be looking the other way. Todd pushed the button to the elevator. You're sure? I'm sure. He didn't say anything else until they got into the elevator. I'm sorry for not telling you about Jimmy. Sarah shook her head. After having met the guy, I don't blame you. Todd chuckled. He does leave an impression on people. I still can't believe he managed to get a job here. And the way Aaron described him, quiet, kept to himself, that's not like him at all. The payout after this must be pretty amazing for him to sit here this long. Sarah stepped out of the elevator and pulled off the pass to give to the receptionist. They both thanked her and then left the building to go back to the apartment. I probably shouldn't have mentioned my real name in there, huh? We're close enough now that it's not going to matter. Todd stopped and pulled Sarah over to stand next to the wall. It's going to be harder this time. I hope you realize that. Chances are my parents are going to be there, which means having me there is going to make things worse. This may be all up to you. Think you can do it? Sarah hesitated. Going into the show in Salt Lake was one thing. It was smaller and there was little chance that they'd find anything there. This was all the big guns, but it was also her sister in there. Yes, I have to. What do we do? Times Square was packed with shoppers as Sarah and Todd left their apartment. They had to walk a few blocks to even get to where they could find a taxi to the fish market. As they sat in the cab, Sarah's phone rang. Hello? You're not going in there alone. Carly's voice was angry, desperate. We're on our way. Don't do anything stupid, please. The call went dead before Sarah could respond. She could have been angry about the fact that Carly didn't trust her, but right now she was just relieved she didn't have to do it by herself. Did you call Carly? She asked. I'm sorry. I just didn't like that you had no backup in there. Todd reached for her hand, but then stopped. Things hadn't been quite the same since her blow-up in the elevator that morning. Sarah smoothed out her dress and went over what would be happening. All of this had to end soon. She wanted her family back together, and she had to do it before it was time to go back to school. Fine. I could have handled it, but whatever. This just means they can go after the jewels while I go find my sister. That was the plan. Todd paid the driver and climbed out. Sarah scrambled out of the cab and over to him. You changed the plan without telling me? I've been going over it, and now you tell me it's completely different. Todd sighed. I'm sorry, but if I told you at the apartment that Carly was coming and you had a different job, you would have fought me there. Now, please just run with it. We're supposed to meet them at a van a block from here, and then we're going one way and they're going another. Still, I would have liked a little notice. Unlike you or the others, I haven't actually done this sort of thing. I'm usually the one who covers up the questions being asked back at the office. Sarah pulled off her heels so she could move quietly through the streets. No need to let them know she was there. The pavement was cold on her feet, sending shocks up her legs with each step. Todd jogged along beside her and pointed out the van. He knocked with 2 slow knocks and 3 quick. The door to the van opened and Danny sat there, eyes narrowed. "Todd?" "Hey, Danny." Todd grinned sheepishly. "Where's everyone else?" "They already went in. You two are supposed to go in through the back. Our infrared shows a few bodies down 2 floors. They could just be guards for the artifacts, but they haven't moved for a while." Sarah could feel the blood drain from her face. "You think they're still alive?" Danny's expression softened. "Yes, they are. Otherwise the infrared wouldn't be so clear. But hurry. I'm not sure how long it'll be before that changes. And guys, my instincts tell me it's a trap. Why keep them here while the rest of the action is up above? It makes no sense." Todd pulled a gun from his belt and checked for bullets. "It makes no sense, but that's how our crime family rolls. It's definitely a trap, but one I know how to spring." "Do they know this?" Danny studied his face as she handed them both earpieces. "Nope. I figured it out the last time I was in their care." He paused. "I'm sorry, Danny, for everything." She raised an eyebrow. "Prove it. Get the hostages, get out safe, and then we'll talk." He nodded and shut the door. "You have your gun?" "Yes." Sarah grabbed his arm. "You really know how to get them out without getting caught?" "Let's just say they trust their guards a little too well. A few black belts and mafia between them, and supposedly they're invincible. But they don't realize those guards have a weakness." Sarah stopped. "And that is?" Todd shook his head. "You don't want to know." Guards stood on either side of the door in the front of the building. Todd signaled to go around the building, so Sarah pulled out her gun and held it at the ready. Never mind that her hand shook. Todd used his lockpick to break in through another door and peeked around the corner. He waved again and Sarah went through first, creeping down the hall. Carly would be proud if she were there to see her now. They'd worked on it after Sarah came bursting through the door one too many times at work. They found the staircase and went down the 2 floors to where Danny said the bodies were. Todd suddenly pulled Sarah into a corner and pinned her against the wall. 2 men strolled past, laughing about something as they headed up the stairs. Sarah glanced up at the face that was just centimeters away from hers. She'd fallen hard for him in the week and a half that they'd been together and hated herself for it. He wasn't one to trust. Not yet. "Stay here until you hear me talking, then follow. Wait until you know they're completely distracted and then head for the door. Danny will tell you where they are. If she asks why she can't hear me, tell her it's better that way, and I'll turn it on as soon as your sister and whoever else they have are safe. Got it?" Sarah nodded and placed a hand on his chest. "Thank you." He kissed her lightly and then he was gone. Sarah pushed the button on the earbud and waited 10 seconds before she said anything to Danny. "I'm downstairs. What's next?" "Why isn't Todd's earpiece on?" Danny's voice boomed in Sarah's ear. "Ow! Please turn down the volume." Sarah rubbed her ear. "He said he'll turn it on in a bit. I'm heading toward them right now. You tell me when I'm at the door." Sarah checked to make sure no one was coming and then left the space. Todd's voice boomed down the hallway. "Hey guys, long time no see." Chairs scooted out and crashed to the floor. "Your parents have been looking for you." "Yeah, I know. I just chatted with them upstairs." Another chair scooted across the floor. "They said to come and relieve you so you could help up there. It's a little crazier than they expected. You tried that the last time. We were punished for it while you walked free." All right. You got me." Sarah peeked around the corner to find Todd sitting at a table while 3 rather large men stood flexing and exchanging glances. "Why don't I make it up to you?" Todd pulled something out of his pocket and dropped it on the table. "There's more where that came from if you win. If I win, you have to walk away and pretend you never saw me." "What does he have?" Danny's voice was quieter this time. "No clue. Where do I go?" There was a pause. "Down the hallway. Looks like 3 doors down." "But that's right where they're sitting." "No, the other way. They're on the opposite end of the hall." Danny paused. I hope he's right and knows what he's doing. Sarah turned and headed back the other way as Todd and the others haggled over the conditions. Soon after, she heard dice, and the guards called out numbers. Nice. They were playing craps. She shook her head and continued on. I assume you hear him? That was always a favorite game of his. Okay, it looks like you're almost there. I'd hurry if I were you. He told me to wait until they were distracted. Danny snorted. Believe me, none of them will be leaving that game anytime soon. Sarah was dying to know how Danny knew that, but didn't ask. She pulled out her own lockpick set and worked on the door. Wait, give me a sec. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Danny. She opened it to find an app link and clicked on it. Where'd you get this? It's Ben's new favorite toy. Just hold it up to the door and it will take care of the rest. Sarah stared at her phone, but did what Danny told her to. The app ran through numbers, letters, and several symbols before finally blinking. The door hissed and a lock popped. She paused to see if the guards heard anything, but they kept playing. She cracked the door open a little and turned on the flashlight from her phone. Anne sat strapped to a chair, blinking at the light. Tears poured down her face as she tried to scream. Sarah slipped inside the room and turned the flashlight on herself. Hey, it's me. It's okay. She pulled the gag out of Anne's mouth. We're going to get you out of here. It's not just me. Anne nodded toward the corner. Sarah flashed the light over to where she pointed. An older couple sat huddled together. Neither of them moved. Are they okay? She loosened the ropes on Anne's hand and then moved to her feet. They're just sleeping, I think. Anne shook the loosened ropes off her hands. How'd you find us? I'll have to tell you later. Right now, we need to get you out of here. The guards won't be distracted for long. Sarah knelt next to the older couple. Hey, wake up. Can you two walk? The man woke first and jumped, covering his face with his hands. No more. Please, no more. I'm here to help. Can you tell me who you are? Grandma? Grandpa? Todd's voice broke. He rushed over and picked his grandma up. Help my grandpa. He's got a bad hip. He was gone before Sarah could ask what happened with the guards. Apparently he won the game they were playing. She took one arm and Anne took the other and pulled him up. Together they helped him to the stairs and toward the back door. Shots rang out behind them. Can you move any faster? Sarah asked. Todd came running back into the building and scooped his grandpa into his arms. Run, we've been compromised. Sarah made sure Anne was ahead of her as they ran out of the building and straight for the van. Another shot and pain blossomed from her leg up into her hip. One more into her shoulder and Sarah fell to the ground. She continued forward, crawling the best she could. Todd stepped out of the van and returned shots, giving Sarah enough time to push up into the van and collapse on the floor. Todd jumped in behind her and slammed the door shut. Go! Sarah held her hand tightly to her shoulder while Todd's grandpa examined her leg. Pain threatened to overwhelm her several times, but she fought back. She had to know what happened, if Carly was safe, anything. Todd moved her hand and wrapped the wound the best he could, then cradled her in his arms. Rest, Sarah. You did well. She reached up and caressed his cheek before finally allowing the blessed darkness to take away her pain. Chapter 10. Todd sat at Sarah's bedside, holding her hand tightly in his. Machines beeped around them, checking her blood pressure and keeping her pain down. He'd known she was tough, but watching her crawl into the van after being hit twice was beyond anything he'd ever seen. The single wound on his side had knocked him out. Sarah's parents were in the other room with Anne. She was fine, but the doctors wanted to monitor her and his grandparents for dehydration. Danny stepped into the room, and Todd quickly dried his tears. How are they? Todd sniffed. It had been a pretty bad night for the whole team. Carly and Dee were fine, but Hunter and Braden were both being checked out for broken bones. They'll be fine. Danny sat in a chair next to Todd. If the FBI hadn't intervened, things would have been a lot worse, I'm glad you called it in. He shrugged. I knew we'd need it. I wasn't going to let us go in without backup. Danny nodded towards Sarah. You really care about her, don't you? I do, and not in that stalkery kind of way either. He laughed and Danny joined in. Look, I'm sorry for messing everything up. You just saved a lot of people tonight, Todd. That's the most unselfish thing I've ever seen from you. She leaned back in her chair. She's good for you. I've seen the way you look at each other. Todd sighed. She may be good for me, but I've done nothing but get her shot at 2 different times, sent into protective custody, and had her sister kidnapped. Danny laughed. I can remember having a few of those things happen to us when we were dating years ago. Remember the beach? How can I forget? Todd stood. I'm going to go check on my grandparents. If she wakes, can you let me know? Of course. Danny caught his arm as he walked past. You know she wouldn't have had it any other way, right? He smiled. She's a feisty one, I'll give her that. His grandparents' room was a little happier than the one he'd just left. They were both sitting up in bed, laughing about something when he walked in. You both look well. Any idea how long you'll be in here? Todd leaned down and kissed his grandma's cheek. Tonight, as long as we both behave. Grandma laughed. My sweet boy, I can't believe you found us. Todd held back tears. I was so relieved when I saw you. We were too. She patted his hand. And that girl of yours, what a firecracker. Yes, she is. Todd pulled up a chair. It's too bad your house is still out of commission. What do you plan to do? Where will you go for Christmas? Grandpa waved his hand. The house should be done already. Your grandmother wanted to make sure that it's ready for Christmas. In fact, I think we should have a party to celebrate. Have one big Christmas Eve bash with everyone who helped tonight. Todd's eyebrows shot up. You want to throw a party? Why not? I think it's a great idea. Grandpa turned to Grandma. Get your party planner on the phone. We don't have a lot of time. Oh yes, it's a wonderful idea. Grandma reached for her phone. Todd stared at them. Christmas Eve is tomorrow. You won't have enough time. Seriously, what has gotten into you two? My boy, when you've been trapped inside a room for days, you tend to rethink your life. We were too hard, too selfish. It's clear we don't have much time left on this earth, and we want to make sure we make things right. Todd had no idea what to even say to that. He stood. I think I'll go back and check on Sarah. They were too busy planning to hear him, so he slipped out and leaned against the doorway. Danny came out of Sarah's room. Hey, she's awake. What's wrong with you? Danny tipped her head to the side. You look like you've seen a ghost. Not a ghost. He rubbed his face. My grandparents are planning a Christmas Eve party for everyone. Danny blinked. Those grandparents? The ones who flipped when I accidentally spilled water on their coffee table? Yes, they said it's because being locked up made them want to change their ways. I need to go rest, I think. Todd went back to Sarah's room and collapsed in a chair. Hey, Sarah smiled weakly. Todd took her hand. How are you feeling? Like I've been shot twice? She laughed, wincing in pain. You know, you didn't have to do that so you'd know how I felt. I could have just told you. He kissed her fingers. She tried to shift positions but couldn't. Todd gently put an arm around her and helped her sit up. Better? Yes. She reached for her water, but Todd beat her to it. I can use my other hand, you know. Todd helped her get a drink and then set the mug down. I know, but you wouldn't be in here if it weren't for me. She glared. I chose to be there, remember? Stop blaming it all on yourself. Yes, but... He stopped when she reached for something to throw. Fine, it's all your fault then. Much better. She coughed. How's Anne? She's fine. She'll probably be in here later to check on you, along with your parents. Sarah laid her head back and closed her eyes. Okay, I'm going back to sleep now. Todd leaned back in his chair and pulled out his phone. News was finally coming out about the craziness of the night before. When the guards let Todd win, he knew something was up. He'd called the FBI, and it turned out that it had been the right choice. Everyone on the list he'd made was there last night, and now they were off the streets. He should have felt guilty that his parents were now in jail, but for the first time in his life, he finally felt free. Todd held up a glass of eggnog and the room went silent. Here's to a much quieter year next year. There were several chuckles throughout the room as everyone tapped their glasses together. Todd winked at Sarah and sat back down at the table. The sterile feel of his grandparents' house was gone with the festive decorations, Christmas music, and presents under the tree. Dinner was served. Ham, potatoes, and so many other things. His grandparents had really outdone themselves this year. "Thank you for inviting us to spend Christmas here." Todd smiled and served her food since she couldn't lift her arm. "I'm glad you could come. It's not quite the snow and skiing you'd planned on, but it's perfect." Sarah took a bite of the ham on her plate and closed her eyes. "This is amazing. When my grandparents decide to throw a party, they go all out." He took a bite of his own food, but he was too excited and nervous for the next part of the evening. When dinner was done, they all moved to the living room. A gigantic tree sat in the corner of the room, decked out with ornaments, lights, and ribbon. It was a custom in their house to open one present that night and the rest in the morning. And while he figured he wouldn't have much under the tree for himself, he'd had fun choosing things for everyone else there. The plan was to give Sarah her gift in the morning, but he couldn't wait. He made sure it was the one in the front of the tree, the first one to be opened that night. Those in the room waited with excitement as Grandma handed the box to Sarah. "Ooh, pretty wrapping. Did you do it yourself?" Sarah loosened the wrapping and pulled out the box. "It's one of my special skills." Todd laughed. Inside the box was another box, and then another, each individually wrapped with different wrapping. When it got down to the very last box, Sarah reached in and pulled out a small box, her eyes wide. Todd took the box from her and opened it, revealing a gold ring with a large heart-shaped diamond. "I know we've only really known each other for a very short time, but it feels like forever. And if you feel it's too early, we can wait. But I couldn't pass up the chance to ask you to be my actual wife, and not just my fake one. Sarah, will you marry me?" "Yes." Sarah nodded as he slipped the ring on her finger. The room erupted with cheers, but at that moment, it felt like it was just the two of them as she leaned forward. "And I know exactly where I want the wedding to be held." Epilogue. 6 months later. Birds chirped in the trees as Sarah stood in her gown waiting to walk down the aisle. Rachel and her mom were right. It was absolutely amazing at Cottonwood Ranch in the springtime. The music began, and she waited for her nieces and nephews to walk down the aisle, followed by Carly, then Dee, then Danny. Sarah had expected it to be a fight to get Danny to be a bridesmaid. After all, Sarah's groom was the one who tried to interrupt Danny's wedding, but Danny had been delighted. Anne gave Sarah a hug before she walked down the aisle as well. The music changed, and Sarah's heart leapt in her throat. It was her turn. Her walk was marred with just the slightest limp, something that would go away someday. She winked at her two sisters and her mom as she passed them. Both sisters had graciously stepped aside as bridesmaids, with the promise that they could help plan the wedding. Todd stood in front, grinning from ear to ear as he took her hands in his. "You're so beautiful." "You don't look so bad yourself," she grinned as they turned to face the priest. Cameras flashed throughout the ceremony, making sure to get each angle so they wouldn't miss her jewelry. Aaron and Deborah stood to the side, making sure that they had what they needed for the bridal magazine shoot. The ceremony itself was short and sweet, and when the pastor announced that he could kiss the bride, Todd cupped Sarah's face and leaned in to kiss her. The electricity Sarah had felt under the mistletoe months before was nothing compared to now. The reception would start in about an hour in the ballroom, but for now, Sarah held tightly to Todd while they greeted guests. Carly came up with them, holding Evan in her arms. "I guess when you were sent here, we did you a favor." "You have no idea." Sarah hugged her and then Brayden. "Listen, I'm thinking that instead of having you back for the summer term, I'm going to give you a couple of months off. Stay here, recuperate, and I'll see you in the fall." Sarah grinned. Really? I think we could all use the break for a bit. Besides, I've heard great things about their 4th of July here. I may just come check it out myself this year. It's a deal. Todd shook her hand. I could use some more time here with the new Mrs. Todd Adams. He pulled Sarah in for another kiss. This has been Christmas Royale, Love on the Run, Book 4. Written by Jacqueline Hardy. Narrated by Jana Erickson. Copyright 2019 to 2100 by Dragons and Fairy Tales Press. Production copyright by Dragons and Fairy Tales Press.